We are now live, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors and officers, welcome to this meeting of full council and welcome to those who are watching on the internet. As Lord Mayor, I call this meeting to order and we will begin. So I'll start with thanking Councillor Craig Simmons for his term as Lord Mayor. He's done a fantastic job, as to Councillor Altaf Khan for his term as Deputy Lord Mayor. We'd like to welcome Councillor Goddard, who moves from Sheriff to Deputy Lord Mayor, and welcome Councillor Wolfe as a new Sheriff. Just some housekeeping rules. Please make sure you switch off your phones and keep your microphones on mute unless you're speaking. You may want to keep your video off unless you're speaking. And remember, please raise your virtual blue hand if you want to speak, and I will call you in order. And then remember to lower your hand once I've called you. When we move to vote, I will ask you to vote by raising your virtual blue hand and waiting for Jennifer to count and check and then lower your hands, or I'll ask Jennifer to take a roll call vote. Okay, the first item on the agenda is number 1 is apologies for absence. Jennifer, did we have any apologies? And can you confirm who is here, please?
Lord Mayor, we have apologies, or I have apologies from Councillors Harris, Arshad, Malik and Councillor Tidball. There may be more from the floor, and we have sufficient councillors to form a quorum, and the last few are joining us. We also have a number of officers present to assist.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Open that up to the floor. Do we have any? I'll take that as a no. Item 3, which is page 21 for your information. So the
Lord
minutes.
Mayor, if I may, you
Yes.
have a blue hand up from Councillor Taylor.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, apologies, Lord Mayor, you got ahead of me. Councillor Azad has sent apologies for lateness, but will be joining the meeting when she can.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Appreciate that. Okay, back on to item 3, page 21 for the minutes. Council is asked to approve the minutes as correct record from the 5th of October 2020. This is for everyone to vote on. So no hands. Okay, should we move on? Item 4, appointments to committees. I think we addressed that at our last council meeting. And item 5, announcements. So this is the first meeting of Lord Mayor of the Year. So a little nervous, but also excited for the next 18 months has to offer. I just want to reiterate again, some of the charities are going to be Wood Farm Youth Centre, Arcty and Oxfordshire Mind. And just to let you know, we're looking to break roughly around 6:30, and then to reconvene for about 7 p.m. and that way we can hear the speaker and then, well, provided the business allows that. Just to remind you, there's a special council meeting on the 5th of January at 5:30, so you should all receive the email by now. And with some great news, I'd like to announce the success of the Local Government Information Awards. The award for Environment and Sustainability Pioneer went to Councillor Tom Hayes, and Councillor Tidball was also nominated for a COVID-19 award. So big round of applause to you all. Well done. Okay, hopefully you've all watched the virtual mayor making video. If not, please do watch it in your own time. We're also sorry to announce that this is Anita Bradley's last council meeting with us. So we'd like to congratulate her on her new post at County Council in Charbel, and she'll be starting that post in the new year. So thank you and good luck from all of us, and you will be truly missed.
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
And the last but not least, our wonderful councillor, Lubna Arshad. We congratulate you on the birth of your baby boy, Burhan Ali Arshad. We wish you and your family all the best, and may your baby be blessed with good health, love, and laughter. I now call on Reverend Buckley just to say a few words.
Thank you so much, Lord Mayor. It was a privilege indeed to watch your mayor making, and there is much for which to be thankful for from the past, but much to look forward to. So old chapters and new chapters, and thank you. I thought it was brilliantly done, if I may say. I was very struck by our usual mix of humour and humanity, compassion and commitment, friendliness and efficiency. And Lord Mayor, it was a privilege to hear more of your story, and indeed what might be suitable emergency treatment for a cycling accident. So I shall keep that in mind as well. The handover of the chain and the shirt was marvellously done. And it was like Christmas come early, said the former Lord Mayor. And for many of us, this season of Advent indeed has that sense of needing to wait well. And if I may say, in this year especially, and for everybody in our city, citizens and businesses and children and students and the aged and everybody, whatever our backgrounds, it is so helpful to learn and to model what it is to wait well. And as you can probably guess, I've been pondering this quite a bit with neighbours in recent times. Learning what it is to wait well in these uncertain times. Waiting well, loving our neighbour, looking after the needy, looking after ourselves. May we be given strength to wait well. So thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, everybody. Lovely to see you, even though just across the screen. And may it be a Christmas season full of life, light and hope for us all. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. Appreciate those words of comfort. Thank you. Okay, I'll call on the Deputy Lord Mayor. Is there anything the Deputy Lord Mayor would like to say?
Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor. Having been in post for, I suppose, officially approximately half an hour, nothing too much to report as yet, but I'll keep you posted.
Thank you very much. And over to the Sheriff.
Likewise, not a lot to report. I haven't got round to hiring my motorised mountain bike for the roundup yet.
Thank you. And over to the Leader of the Council.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. May I be the first to formally congratulate you since taking up your office, and indeed to the Deputy Lord Mayor and to the Sheriff as well. And I'd also like to formally offer my congratulations to Councillor Arshad on the very happy news of her new baby boy. The only other thing I wanted to say really was that, and I think we will touch upon it in our motion later on, but I think it is the enormous pride that we in Oxford feel at the success so far as we can tell so far of the Oxford vaccine, and the huge hope that brings, not just for our city but for the country and indeed the world. And I think that it is worth our marking that particular moment in our city's history. So we will discuss it further, I have no doubt, not just at this meeting but in future meetings, but it is great news.
Thank you. And Chief Executive?
Nothing to report.
Chief Finance Officer? Monitoring Officer?
Nothing to report, Lord Mayor.
Okay. Item 6, public addresses. We don't have any, do we? No. Okay, item 7, which is on page 35, we have the project approval and allocation of housing and growth deal funding for affordable housing delivery. So the council is recommended to approve a revision of the general fund capital budget in 2020-21 of £3,123,000 for the initial grant payment in relation to the William Morris Close site, and a further capital budget for 2021-22 of £347,000 to fund the remaining grant balance payable for that scheme, all which will be funded by the capital grant income from Oxfordshire Housing and Growth deal. So I call on Councillor Rowley to introduce this report, to the proposal report.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and heartiest congratulations on assuming your office. Good to see you virtually, metaphorically, in the Lord Mayor's seat. This hopefully is quite a simple report. We are directing some housing funding from the Housing Growth Deal, in which the City Council is a partner, to 3 sites, which already have permission for the building of housing. That is William Morris Close, Gibbs Crescent and Champion Way, which will result in a total of 9 extra social rent houses and 44 extra intermediate non-market houses over and above what was originally proposed. The reason it comes from Council, it's coming to Council, is that although the money is going through our account from the growth deal funding and to the for the providers, it is a large sum of money, 3.47 million in total, and therefore Council has to approve that, which I hope Council will. And I will now shut up and take any questions.
Do we have a seconder for this? Councillor Brown?
Formally second, Lord Mayor.
Any other questions for Mike Rowley? Okay, then we're going to go for sorry, I just got unmuted then. Muted.
Apologies, Lord Mayor. I think we've got some questions. Got some hands up for questions.
Sorry, I've just seen that. Okay, we'll take Councillor Craig Simmons first.
Yeah, thank you very much. And indeed, I've had many opportunities to welcome you as a new Lord Mayor, but I'm very happy to do that again. So welcome. And on item 7, I mean, it is, as Councillor Rowley says, you know, good news. I just wanted to ask a question. I mean, it's if you look forward to item 14, the partnership report, in paragraph 11, it mentions about section 106 contribution to improve the environmental performance of housing. I'm just wondering if that is being used on this any of these developments. So that's one question. And the second question, or indeed could he ask what the environmental performance of these houses will be? And the second question was about, I think you might have answered it, but I might have not entirely understood, is that on Gibbs Crescent, you mentioned there's an additional payment to A2 Dominion. I'm just wondering, you know, is it those additional houses, the social houses we get, affordable homes, as a direct quid pro quo for that, or is that money for something else? I only ask because there's obviously market housing on that site, which will generate a revenue as well. And also, while I'm got the floor, I'd just like to sort of welcome, you know, Champion Way community-led housing. I think that's a great innovation. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. On the environmental performance of the houses, they will be as detailed in the original planning applications which have gone through. The grant funding is specifically increases the affordability of the homes. It doesn't change the environmental performance. So William Morris Close and Gibbs Crescent are both being delivered by registered social landlords, and the details will be on the applications. I'm sorry that I don't have them to hand at the moment, but they are in the public domain. On Champion Way, obviously I agree with Craig. I was about to say I agree with the Lord Mayor, but I agree with Craig, the former Lord Mayor, in very much welcoming this. It's a scheme in which I've been particularly involved and active in promoting, and like to take the opportunity to thank Councillor Howlett, who's also been very keen to promote and very useful in helping us bring forward community-led housing schemes. The other question, I'm sorry, Craig, it slipped my mind.
Well, it was to do with the funding to A2 Dominion for Gibbs Crescent.
Yeah. yes, the funding enables a greater proportion of social rent and shared ownership housing to be viable within the scheme.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowley. Now we have Councillor Liz Wade.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Lots of congratulations. I'm sure it'll be an amazing year, despite everything. The question is about the initial grant and the subsequent payment in relation to William Morris Close. This is a lot of money. It's 3.5 million, as Mike has told us. Can you confirm that the city will not be funding this 3.5 million up front, but will pay it when the capital grant comes in from Oxfordshire Housing and Growth Deal, and not before? I don't want us to be out of pocket until the Oxford Growth Deal materialises. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Yes, this is growth deal funding that is going through, that is going via the council, as is the usual procedure. It's not the city council's own money, and the growth, the money is there, so to speak, from the growth deal grant. I can confirm that.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you again, Councillor Rowley. Third question to Councillor from Councillor Andrew Gant.
Thanks very much, Lord Mayor. My congratulations as well. Liz has asked half of my questions, so that saves a bit of time, which is great. It's just a small point, but paragraph 5 of the opening report delegates authority for spends over £500,000 to the Chief Executive in consultation with 2 cabinet members, which is a small but significant change to normal practice. Why can't it go through the normal process, which, if I understand correct, would have been to go to cabinet?
Sorry, I'm just looking at the paragraph that you've that you're referring to.
Sorry, it's paragraph 5 of the opening remarks, as it were. The recommendation 5, I should say. Recommendation 5.
Oh, recommendation 5. Yes, it's to delegate authority to Chief Executive in consultation with Cabinet Member for Finance, Ed, and with me, to approve agreements within the project approval and budget envelope that we are giving at the moment. There's little sense in us agreeing the spend of 3.47 million, which isn't actually coming from us, it's coming from the growth deal now, and then coming back again to agree the details of any payments of over 500,000 within that, which would simply be administrative payments to the registered social landlords involved. So this is our opportunity to debate and hopefully agree the full budget envelope, which is 3.47 million.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rowley. Do you wish to sum up?
No, Lord Mayor.
Okay, the recommendations before us are in the report, copied in the briefing note. We will now take the vote. For those in favour, please raise your blue hands, including me. Oops.
Lord Mayor, there's a few. We just give a second. Are there any more hands to go up? Councillor Haynes has Councillor Haynes has indicated he is in support. Can I just check Councillor Smith and Councillor Gotch and Councillor Altaf Khan? Councillor Gotch has a thumbs up. Councillor Smith, how do you vote? Councillor Linda Smith.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. That is, everybody has voted in support.
Okay, so that's carried. Okay, takes us to item 8, page 42. Project approval and allocation of next steps accommodation programme. Funding for affordable housing delivery and homelessness prevention. So the council is to recommend to approve a revision of the housing revenue account, capital budget in 2020-21 for 1,950,000 for the initial purchase of 5 properties to be funded by capital grant from MHCLG Homes England of 150,000, by Oxfordshire Housing and Growth deal funding of 275,000, and HRA council borrowing up to £770,750. I call on Councillor Rowley again to propose this. Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll try and be brief. This is part of a project to deliver 50 housing first properties, one-bed flats for people coming out of homelessness over the next 3 years, of which we hope to get 15 by direct purchase from the private sector and 35 by filling voids in council and housing association stock. You've heard me talk about housing first at some length in council meetings before, and the success it has had in places as far afield as New York and Helsinki in resolving the crisis experienced by some people with complex needs experiencing homelessness. It works, generally speaking, in about 4 out of 5 cases in places where it has been tried. The idea being, rather than forcing people to jump through the successive hoops of a system, to put somebody in a house with the wraparound support that they need to maintain that tenancy. And it's an addition to the mix of provision that we already have in Oxford. It's not attempting to replace it all, and certainly not in the short term. But it is I think a time to do this, building on the learning from the coronavirus everybody in programme. So what we're asking council to do on this occasion, there will be future reports for future budget allegations in succeeding years. What we're asking council to do this time is to approve the revision to the housing revenue account capital budget for this current year, this current financial year, for the initial purchase of 5 properties from the private sector, and the money is coming from a mix of the Next Steps accommodation programme grants, Homes England, from the Housing and Growth deal, and from Housing Revenue Account Council borrowing, because the properties will be within the Housing Revenue Account. There'll be council flats let at social rent. So the tenants will initially have wraparound support, which the Next Steps accommodation funding in a separate budget line is also helping to pay for, but from then on they will be, as it were, normal council tenants.
Thank you, Councillor Rowley. Okay, do we have a seconder? Councillor John Tanner, formally seconding? Yes. Okay, are there any other questions for the Cabinet Member Mike Rowley? No. Okay, Councillor Rowley, would you like to sum up? Oh, sorry, there is. My apologies. Yes, we do. Yes, Councillor Dickworth, my apologies.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. Yeah, I mean, I think actually Councillor Rowley's just answered my query. My understanding is we haven't normally used HRA money for homelessness, and I presume that's because normally this has been short-term hostel type accommodation. We've now got a very welcome housing first thing. It's a new thing for us, and I think it's really exciting and promising. And actually, Councillor Rose used the word tenants 3 or 4 times in his presentation. So I was just checking that the difference between the two, and the reason why we can use HRA is because they will actually be tenants, and they'll have some some tenants' rights, and I think I can see him nodding. So I assume that is correct. Thank you. But it'd be worth just clarifying that we've actually made a shift here from temporary accommodation into tenancy.
Yes, that's right. It's not so much a shift in that the council will still operate temporary accommodation for people who become homeless, but these are these actual properties will, well, the ones we buy will be operated as council houses with secure tenancies. Some will be voids from the council stock, and those will be operated as secure council tenancies. Some will be voids from housing associations, and those will be operated on the housing association's terms. But it will all be, all of the 50 properties that we're hoping to bring forward will be social rented tenancies.
Thank you, Councillor Rowley. Any other questions? I don't see any blue hands. Okay, we'll take this to the vote. So we're recommending this report before us, and we're going to take it to the vote. So those who can raise your blue hands, please do now.
Lord Mayor, I am assuming that all the hands going up are in favour. If they are not in favour, please take them down. Okay, I have currently 39 in favour, and I need to check with in order if I can find you. Bear with me a second. Councillor Haynes, how do you vote? Are you voting for? Or against? Councillor Haynes?
All right.
Okay, Councillor Gotch, for or against? Thumb up, thumb down. Thumb up is for, and Councillor Smith has put a hand up. So that's 40 in favour. So that's carried.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, item 9, which is on page 49. Just bear with me. Appointment of Head of Law and Governance, the monitoring officer. So the council is recommended to designate the newly appointed Head of Law and Governance, Susan Soul, as the council's monitoring officer with effect from the 4th of January 2021, and appoint the newly appointed Head of Law and Governance, again, Susan Sale, as the council's returning officer, as the council's electoral registration officer from effect from the 4th of January 2021. And I believe Councillor Brown is going to speak on this.
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. There's not really a great deal to add to what you've just read out, really, other than to say, as we've sort of touched upon already in your opening remarks today, that we would really like to do a big thank you at this point to Anita Bradley, who's been an excellent Head of Law and Governance for us. And I think we've all benefited over the years from her very fair ability to arbiter between different disputes at different times, and to provide guidance and clarity of thought to all councillors of all parties and none, and to officers as well. And we wish her all the very best in her new role. So to take on the different roles that Anita has undertaken, we have appointed already Susan Sale as the council as the new Head of Law and Governance, but that doesn't necessarily automatically go with the roles of monitoring officer, returning officer, and electoral registration officer, and all of those are decisions that have to be made at council level rather than rest with the appointments committee. So that's what we're being asked to do today. Susan Sale is already the Head of Law and Governance appointed, and will start formally on the 11th of January. The other thing that the report makes clear is that there's a small gap between Anita leaving and Susan arriving, and Susan has kindly agreed, as is not unusual in these sorts of circumstances, to take on the important and necessary role of monitoring officer for that very short period before she officially starts with us. So again, that is what is recommended in this report. Happy to take any questions, Lord Mayor, but that's the situation.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, we have Councillor Craig Simmons.
Yep, thank you. I'd just like to add my voice to Susan's to thank Anita for her sort of work at the council, and you know, thank you for keeping us all in check and order. You know, job of a law officer is obviously to stand as a last defence against abuse of the Constitution. She's done a great job with skill and professionalism, which I'm sure she'll carry forward to her new role in County and Charwell, and good luck with your future. I suspect you may well need it, but thank you.
Thank you. And we have Councillor Andrew Gant.
Yes, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I just wanted to associate myself with those remarks about Anita and thank her for all her contribution. Susan referred to disputes. Of course, I know nothing about that because I never get involved in disputes, but Anita's always been very ready with advice, often quickly, indeed during this very meeting. So I wish her very well. I'm sure we will all see her in her new role, and I hope she will get quickly used to comments about being relegated and such like.
Thank you. And we have Councillor Shaista Aziz.
Sorry, I'll start again because I was muted. I just wanted to echo what all my colleagues have said, and thank you, Anita, for your great service, and thank you for being robust, fair, and always doing your job without fear or favour. And just to say, I've really enjoyed working with you, and I wish you all the best in your next job. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so the recommendations before us are in the report. So what we're going to do, sorry, Councillor Brown.
Lord Mayor, I don't think you've taken a formal seconder. I was going to ask Councillor Chapman if he'd formally second.
My apologies, yes. I see that Councillor Chapman has seconded. It's no report. And then blue hands for voting again.
All those in favour?
Hopefully that should be all of us.
I see there are a couple of people who I need to find on my list. Councillor Haynes and Councillor Gotch has a thumb up and Councillor Haynes is waving. So that's everybody apart from Councillor Altaf Khan, who I can't see. Councillor Linda Smith, let's put a thumb up. Councillor Altaf Khan, can you confirm which way you wish to vote?
Put a
blue hand up. That is, everybody has voted in favour of appointing Susan Sale as the monitoring officer.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item 10, page 53, Council and Committee Meetings Programme, March 2021 to May 2022. Excuse me. So the Council is recommended to approve the programme of Council, Committee and other meetings from March 21 to 31st of May 2022, attached to Appendix 1, and delegate authority to the Head of Law and Governance in consultation with group leaders to make changes to the programme in the event there is any decision by Council to change a committee structure or committee remits which impacts on the programme of meetings, and delegate authority to the Head of Law and Governance to set out dates for additional training and briefing sessions for members. And over to you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Very little to add to this report, to your introductory remarks, other than to say that the important thing is that this report contains a proposal to move the March Council meeting to the 22nd of March and to start that meeting at 6 p.m. rather than the usual 5 p.m. And the reason for that is because, of course, originally when this programme of meetings was approved by Council, we were not anticipating to have elections in May 2021. and we are now going to be in the purdah period unless we move the council meeting to the 22nd of March. And there is also a growth board meeting that takes place, is also being moved because for the same reasons, taking place all that afternoon, which will occupy at least some of us. So that is the reason for a slightly later start. So I hope that council can approve this report with that little bit of explanation.
Do we have a seconder, please? Okay, Councillor Ed Turner to second this.
Formally.
Formally, sorry. Okay. Again, recommendations before us are in the report. We will now take the vote. Those in favour, raise your blue hands.
Okay, again, Lord Mayor, I'll just give everybody a second to raise their hand if they wish. So that is, everybody has their hand up, apart from Councillor Haynes and Councillor Gotch, and bear with me till I find them on my screen. Councillor Gotch has put his thumb up, and I have apologies. Councillor Haynes, thumb up or thumb down in favour. So that is everybody in favour. So the recommendations are carried.
It's carried. Okay, thank you. Which takes us on to item 11, cabinet minutes. There are two sets. So the first one on page 63 on the 14th of October. And call on Councillor Rowley.
Sorry,
no,
Lord
sorry.
Questions.
Questions. A call on Councillor Dick Wolf to Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It's a quick question, really. We had an excellent paper responding to the government's harebrained proposal on their planning white paper. I'd be very interested to know whether we've had any kind of response from central government on that.
This is a question for Councillor Hollingsworth.
Yeah, that's for me. Councillor Wolf, I would be delighted and astonished, possibly in the other order, if we'd had any response from government whatsoever. I'm afraid we haven't had a response, let alone one that acknowledges the accuracy of what we've said. But I think the observations from coverage of the ongoing debate suggest that the government might be losing its enthusiasm for some of the ideas in the planning white paper at a speed more or less as rapid as the departure from Mr. Cummings from number 10 Downing Street. I do hope so.
Thank you. And we have Councillor Ros Smith.
Thank you, and thank you, Alex, for that response to that question. Mine is actually on that question too, if I could, Alex. I did note actually in the minutes that the recording actually that there were concerns at a fundamental level over these proposals, which were actually shared, across the political rainbow. In fact, actually. And I see that the Cabinet agreed to delegate a decision to send the final response to this consultation to your good self. But I've been looking on the Council website and I cannot find a copy. And I wondered if you could forward us a copy of the response, the official response that was sent from this Council. So if indeed we do get a response from the Secretary of State, we could put the two together. It does actually, it's also highlighted in the minutes as well that these proposals in the white paper would remove the crucial opportunity for local people to contribute to planning decisions. So I have a sort of another little question, if I could, sideways onto that I noticed this week that 2 East Oxford applications are actually going to be considered by the West Oxford Planning Committee. And I did wonder if we were going in advance of the white paper. I certainly hope not, but perhaps you could comment on those two questions. Thank you, Alex.
Yes, certainly. I think the opposition to the government's proposals is across the piece. So if you political rainbow, there is a very substantial blue stripe to the opposition to this. West Oxfordshire, which is a Conservative controlled council, also had a special report to its cabinet to express their concerns, and that's been the case right the way across the country. I have to say, I don't know why our response isn't already on the website, and I'm sure officers taking note of this meeting will ensure that is rectified ASAP, but we did send our submission in. The issue, I mean, I can't comment without the precise geography, the precise street locations of the two planning applications, but the city isn't split by the river. It's split with, I think it's 11 wards in the west and 13 wards in the east. So a substantial chunk of well, I mean, I think the core of East Oxford around St Clement's and St Mary's is covered by the West Area Planning Committee. So that's a very specific city council nomenclature. It's laid down in the constitution, and in the unlikely event that officers have made an error and sent an application to the wrong planning committee, I'm sure the relevant planning committee chair would spot it and immediately send it to the correct planning committee.
Thank you, Alex.
Okay, for the second meeting, 11th of November, page 69, we have Councillor Dick Wolf.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, this is related to the PSPOs. That's paragraph 88 in the Cabinet minutes, alcohol and dog control PSPOs. Notice down the bottom that the chair asked that councillors be provided with information about options for addressing and how to report antisocial behaviour in their wards. It is not unknown for emails to slip past me on the screen, but I don't think I remember seeing any advice. I'm wondering whether it's forthcoming. It's particularly relevant, I think, particularly in East Oxford. I mean, it'd be very important for us to know whether there is a PSPO in place or not, given that these PSPOs are not citywide now. And I noticed that Cabinet had some misgivings about that. Will we be told, will ward members be told if they have a PSPO on their patch, and will we be getting a sort of update brief? Because yeah, I know what the current ways of reporting SB are, but I'm not sure whether that's going to change.
Do you like me to respond to that? Yeah. Hi. Councillor Wolf, yeah, in the new PSPO there is a map outlining the areas that are included. Your patch is, I think, but that's a good point. We could perhaps look to make sure that everyone is notified that whether they're in or not. So that the dog control order is still covering the whole city, but the alcohol one has been reduced to areas where we had good evidence that there was a persistent problem. So I will try and make sure that everyone gets notified then. But if you want to check up early, it is outlined in the PSPO in the appendix somewhere. Let's have a look on that. You know that you can always report to Safer Oxford at oxford.gov.uk. And if, just as a heads up, if anyone has a particular problem in their ward, we did a really successful little meeting of our antisocial behaviour officers, some residents from an area, our licensing officers who could give information about whether a particular off licence should have been selling alcohol or not, and the local police, and me and ward councillors. So that's an option if someone's got a particular hotspot they'd like looked at too.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Louise Upton. Okay, we have Councillor Ross Smith.
Apologies, Lord Mayor, it's a legacy hand. I will lower it now.
Sorry, just before you start, sorry to interject. I'll just let you know we've only got about 5 or 6 minutes and there's a couple of speakers. If we can keep it short, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
It was a legacy hand, Lord Mayor. Apologies, I've taken it down.
Okay, Councillor Andrew Grant.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. Just wanted to ask about paragraph 88 about the PSPO and about the change in the remit of the alcohol PSPO. Reading the report, there was clearly some debate, and some of the flow of the debate appears to be a little bit unclear about exactly, where it was going. I mean, for a start, it says that the new PSPO no longer cover the whole city, but be limited to areas where there was documentary evidence of a problem, which could be read to imply that the previous one was used in areas where there was not documentary evidence of a problem. Further down, it says Cabinet expressed some concern about the reduction in scope of the current alcohol PSPO. So I'd be interested to know, whether the Cabinet is content both with the remit of the previous PSPO that we've been living under for 3 years, and indeed of the current one. The second issue that often comes up with PSPOs is the relationship between the power to criminalize things and its use. And this one again starts out by making a point that they are useful because they give an authority the power to determine that an activity is illegal, and then goes on to make a virtue of the fact that the authority has not done that. Could you confirm whether there have in fact been any formal processes started under this PSPO, and if so, whether there are any that could not in fact have been handled by other powers?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Gant. So the reason, so the PSPO that has just lapsed was, if you like, rolled over from the old Dog Control Acts when the new legislation came in under the Crime and Disorder Act 2014, I think. So for that original one, we didn't have to do the evidence providing that we have had to do for this one. We were just allowed to roll over the old act and do it citywide. The renewal now is the first time that we've had to do the complete process of the public consultation and providing evidence of where there is a persistent problem. So that is why it's different now. We didn't have to provide the evidence last time. I think it's fair to say that some people in the Cabinet were wary about the fact that the area was being restricted, but I say we could only do it where we had evidence from our public consultation that people had flagged up areas, or our antisocial behaviour team and the police team had been using it. So that is why, and we didn't have that for the whole city. So that's why the area has been restricted. I can confirm that we have not issued any fixed penalty notices, any court summons to anybody under that alcohol one, but it was used many times by officers, police officers and council officers to ask people to hand over their drink and to make it difficult for them to drink in a place where it was causing distress to the rest of our residents. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Councillor Upton. Okay, if we're content with that, we're going to move on to item 12. So you'll see the briefing note says questions on notice from members of council. So first one is Councillor Wolfe to Councillor Rowley, ONS data on homelessness. Do you have a supplementary?
Moving too fast for me, Lord Mayor. You're really on top of this. I don't think I did on that one, no.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Gant to Councillor Rowley, social housing declaration. No, it's not, decarbonisation fund.
Yes, thank you very much. A brief supplementary, if I may. Thank you. That's a very clear answer, which Stephen Clark has actually already provided me. And it explains why the council did not bid for this fund. However, the fact is that a government pot to support decarbonising homes has been missed. Would it have been better if we had had schemes oven ready, to use his phrase?
Thank you, Councillor Gant. I'm sure it would, but unfortunately, the government at present is making financial decisions about what money it will put out, give out at very short notice, and we can't. In the time between when applications opened, the scheme was announced, and between when schemes were supposed to be finished, there isn't time for anybody to start a new scheme, or at least not one that would be of substantial benefit to the community. I think hopefully there will be longer term financial planning when the coronavirus crisis is over, or we might have to wait for a change of government for longer term financial planning, so that councils can take advantage of grant funding of this kind, and we will certainly be looking to do so in the future.
Thank you. Sorry, bear with me. I was just catching up on the chat. Okay, Councillor Garden to Councillor Clarkson. Restarting tourism. No, it's not actually. I've got ahead of myself. Oh, there we are. No, that is right. From Councillor Garden to Councillor Clarkson. Restarting tourism in the city.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Clarkson. I do have a follow-up question. The answer makes no mention of restoring the grant to Experience Oxfordshire. Or furthermore, the recent Oxfordshire Economic Recovery Plan reports shows that Cambridge is recovering more quickly. I was wondering if you had thoughts about why. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Garden. At the moment, obviously, we're discussing our budget, and we are looking at how we can support Experience Oxfordshire. But I think, as my answer shows, the work that we have done with getting grants and supporting businesses involved in tourism, and also on the Rediscovering Oxfordshire campaign, shows that we have been working very closely with them, and actually we've had a lot of success. Certainly the Rediscovering Oxford campaign was considered very successul. So we are working closely with them, and we are continuing to discuss what support we can give them as we go forward. Okay. And sorry, the second part of your question, just remind me.
The Oxfordshire Economic Recovery Plan. The report shows that Cambridge is recovering more quickly, or expecting to recover more quickly. Any indications why?
I think I don't know exactly, but I know that there's initial evidence which seems to suggest that Oxford, of all the cities in the country, has a very high number of people who work from home, and so I think I saw about third or fourth in the country for people who haven't yet gone back to offices. Now, obviously, that has a huge impact on the footfall in the city centre and on the impact on local businesses. You might have thought that it was a similar thing in Cambridge, but Oxford is a larger city, and so I think that may well be one of the factors. But we will continue to look at it and look at the data and see what we can do to support our businesses in the city centre.
Thank you, Councillor Clarkson.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Item 4, Councillor Garden to Councillor Chapman, enforcement activity.
Thank you very much. No follow-up.
No supplementary. Okay. Councillor Wolfe to Councillor Chapman, social distancing and road signs. Any supplementary?
No supplementary, Lord Mayor, thank you.
Councillor Landell Mills to Councillor Turner, closure of Boswells. Is there a supplementary?
No, there's no supplementary.
Thank you. Councillor Wolfe to Councillor Hayes, active travel priorities and proposed schemes.
No supplementary, Lord Mayor, thank you.
Councillor Wolf to Councillor Hayes, use of active travel tranche 2 funds. Supplementary?
Not on that one either, Lord Mayor. Thank you very much.
From Councillor Wolf to Councillor Hayes, zero emission zones timetable. Is there a supplementary?
No, there's no supplementary on that either.
I hope it's like this at every full council. Okay. From Councillor Landell Mills to Councillor Hayes, ZEZ and Connect traffic modelling. Supplementary.
Thank you
No.
for the answer, and supplementary on this one.
Thank you. Councillor Simmons to Councillor Hayes, sorry.
I've got 2 questions.
Oh, sorry, you cut out. Okay, let's get back to you. Okay, so you've got a supplementary. Fire ahead.
I was going to ask how many ANPRs are proposed for the first tranche and also for the second tranche of the ZEZ.
Thanks, Councillor Landell Mills. The changing of the phrase for the first iteration of the zone to become the pilot is very deliberately so. It's in order that we can learn from it, so we can make such determinations as how many ANPR cameras we might need to roll out for the second phase. In the first phase, we're still exploring that issue at the current moment, and we'll be reflecting on the consultation feedback that we get as part of our decision making.
So no ANPRs will be used?
No ANPR will be used. As to the number, we haven't yet fixed that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, back to number 12, Councillor Simmons to Councillor Hayes, electronic road pricing trial.
Thank you for the answer, no supplementary.
From Councillor Gant to Councillor Hayes, shops offering car park discounts. Is there a supplementary?
Yeah, just a brief one. This was quite a striking thing, struck me at the top of the escalator in Debenhams the other day. Thank you for the supplementary. Just to say, obviously, I'd be glad to know of any response that is received from the shop. Please.
Thanks, Councillor Gant. As soon as I receive a response, I'll make sure that you're copied into it.
Thank you.
From Councillor Landell Mills to Councillor Hayes, free parking at Park and Ride.
Yes, thank you for the answer, which is, I think, is an interesting one, and I appreciate the fact that we don't have, specific statistics, and we obviously have to use what we can to make sense of this. But it seems to me that this is an important initiative to help bring more trade into the city centre, and I wondered if there'd been any further work in taking the percentage increases in passenger numbers into revenue found in the city centre. What's the average? For example, does Councillor Hayes have an idea what the average spend per person, the average passenger might be, and how that correlates to, say, an expenditure of £10,000 a week for all the 3 car parks?
Thanks, Councillor Landell Mills. As you can imagine, we don't have a precise figure or an average in the way that you're asking for it. It's very much based on the feedback that we receive presently from our local businesses and particularly our retail sector. And so in our conversations with our retail, we'll continue to ask them what impact they feel the Park and Ride is having on their fortunes. Certainly in a conversation with Westgate Alliance, the conversation about Park and Ride came up and whether they thought it was beneficial for their overall prosperity as a shopping centre, and I think they would affirm that it was helpful to have the Park and Ride offer as well as the local businesses.
Thank you. You didn't get anywhere near a figure for this.
Which particular figure are you asking about? That feels like a second supplementary question, but there you go. Sorry, Mark, I've just spoken over you.
No, that's fine. I'm sure you two can sort this out over an email. I'm going to move on to item 15. So we have Councillor Wade to Councillor Hayes, Aristotle Bridge repairs.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Councillor Hayes, I was on Aristotle Bridge this morning and it hasn't been mended. In fact, you can now see the underside of the ramp because all the pebbles have come out. Have some of them here. It needs to be mended quickly, otherwise the ramp itself will collapse. The other problem is cars are actually eating the plastic bits that were theoretically holding it in, and that can't be a good idea. We've already had 2 deaths of cattle on the meadow, and I'm very concerned that we might have another one. So this is urgent. It needs to be sorted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wade, and thank you for visiting the site. It appears there's been 2 breakdowns of communication, the first within the County Council and the second with the City Council. So I'll pick those up and I'll come back to you as quickly as possible.
Thank you very much. That's great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Simmons to Councillor Linda Smith, community groups and tree planting.
Yeah, thank you very much for your response, Councillor Smith. I think there is a lot of interest amongst community groups. So I'm just wondering whether there's a particular process for community groups to register with the ODS Park Service. Is it simply a sort of email or something more formal? Because I think that the former has been tried.
Councillor Tom Hayes.
Sorry.
I don't think that's a question to me.
That's Councillor Smith.
Oh, sorry, Linda Smith. My apologies.
I think we should be able to hear Councillor Smith now.
I'm off mute, thanks. Thank you, Councillor Simmons. If you know of people who would like to get involved, please ask them to email myself, and I will make sure that we speak to them and make the best use of their kind offers of help and participation.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Wade, Councillor Linda Smith, signs for Cutslow Horticultural Therapy Nursery and Garden Centre.
No,
is that supplementary? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Simmons to Councillor Hollingsworth, reconsidering land use planning.
Yes, Councillor Hollingsworth, thank you very much for your answer. Just a point of clarification, you mentioned Diamond Place. My understanding is that, as indeed, that land will be used for retail and housing, is that the level of parking will be retained. Is that the case?
You need to refer. I shouldn't have put the SPD in the answer without giving a detailed explanation of the SPD's standing. An SPD is a document which explains and goes further than adds additional interpretation to the current plans in a local policies in a local plan. So the SPD, when written, basically expanded on the policies of the then local plan, which is the one that ran to 2026. Elements of it obviously remain just as important as they were before. The issue about the reprovision of the community centre and so on, but policies that sit within the new local plan, specifically the parking policies, which as you know include radical policies. I know they're radical because people are unhappy about them, and that's always a sign we're doing the right thing. That there should be car-free developments, particularly in sites like this, which is an extraordinarily sustainable site in terms of public transport and access to local facilities. So those are the policies that should apply. Now, what I haven't done is gone through and worked out what the full implications of the different elements within the scheme would be. But clearly it is different to what is written in the SPD, and I do apologise for writing SPD in the answer without saying, obviously, please bear in mind that all policies that have changed in between the two local plans should apply here too. I hope that helps, but I can arrange for a briefing, unless you were just trying to catch me out, of course.
No, I was just one of the ward members mentioned it as a concern, so that's why.
Well, maybe I can broaden my briefing to the ward members also.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Wolfe to Councillor Hollingsworth, Oxford living rent.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yeah, just want to check whether there's a typo in the reply there. We do have a living wage project which is rolling out and has been for some years, I think. Just want to check that that's a typo and it was.
It is a typo. I do apologise. That should read Oxford living rent, not wage.
well.
That's fine, and I'm glad to hear it. Thank you.
Councillor Wolfe to Councillor Hollingsworth, development of Iffley Meadows.
Indeed. I don't have a supplementary on that, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Wolfe to Councillor Hollingsworth, again, right to co-op campaign, private sector renting.
No, I'm happy with that reply. Thank you very much, and glad to see these things are happening.
Councillor Wade to Councillor Hollingsworth, C Court Park and Ride.
Thanks very much. I do have a supplementary. I'm pleased to hear that the Seacourt Park and Ride is nearly finished, but since ODS is still on the site, I've got a question. Have we considered putting solar panels on the roof of the brand new bus shelter that we've got there? It would make sense in terms of lighting and so on. Has that been considered, and is it something that could be looked at this point in time? Thank you.
I will get you a written answer as to whether it's been considered or not, because I can't remember the detail there. What I would say is I think given the circumstances, and I can tell you, you may be pleased to see it's nearly finished. You're nowhere near as pleased as I am to see it's nearly finished. That any change to the specification at this stage is something I think I'd want to avoid, let alone the project managers working to ensure the delivery of the site would want to avoid. So I'll get you a written answer on the consideration or otherwise.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Henwood to Councillor Hollingsworth, educational provision in Littlemore.
Thank you for the answer. No supplementary, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Henwood to Councillor Hollingsworth, liaison with County Council over infrastructure in Littlemore. Supplementary?
No supplementary, but I do have concerns on this.
Okay. Moving on.
If that was a supplementary, can I suggest that those concerns are expressed to the County Council? Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Simmons to Councillor Upton, University COVID cases numbers.
No, thank you for that clarification. I'm sure people will be very welcome with that response.
Thank you again. Councillor Simmons to Councillor Upton, Oxford Safer Streets bids.
No, thank you very much for your response. You'll notice that I brought that up at the police meeting as well.
Thank you. Councillor Landell Mills to Councillor Upton, cycling infrastructure improvements. Is there a supplementary? Okay.
Thank you very much for the answer. It's all interesting stuff. I was just really wondering where we're getting with any cycleways as such. I mean, where have we got? Are there any new ones?
Are you talking about the county council's tranches 1 and 2 of active travel money?
Well, perhaps those would be one of them. I mean, there's various ways. There's different ways we can approach this, but routes where it's easier for. I mean, a variety of things could be considered a new cycleway. I mean, a canal towpath, an upgraded bridleway. There's a number of ways of doing it, or albeit part of the public highway.
Well, you'd have to talk to the county, I guess, more about public highway, but there are things that are happening. I mean, the Riverside routes, which happened last year, are all done. The City Council, we've taken on filling in some bits of off-road route along Cuckoo Lane, along Boundary Brook Lane. These are projects that we are drawing up the plans for at the moment that the county have given us the money to do. So those will be coming in hopefully within the next 6 to 12 months. And then the Greenways project that I mentioned in the answer, that is to scope out approximately 10 off-road routes into the city from the surrounding villages and towns. We think we need to have those routes scoped so that the next time the government makes an announcement of some funding with a ridiculously short deadline, we actually have some shovel-ready routes to go. So we think that's a really important way to go. Obviously, we started that before lockdown and COVID happened, but you know, I think those will be in the future. We're looking at, you know, sort of 2 to 3 years time, probably before any of those are actually done, but those are in the pipeline too, I hope.
Thank you.
Thank you. I realise we've got some questions coming up and Councillor Tidball isn't here. So from Councillor Wade to Councillor Tidball, Syrian refugee families resettlement. Is there a supplementary?
Oh, there would be.
Or if there is, would you put that in email to Councillor Tidball, please?
I will do that. I'd quite like to ask the question now so that it's in the minutes.
Okay.
But we had 30 families between 2015 and 2018, according to Councillor Tidball's reply. I wanted to know how many we've had since, but I will send her an email and ask her that question. Thank you.
Councillor Gant to Councillor Tidball, capital spend on fabric and structure of community centres. Is there a supplementary?
Yes, similarly to Councillor Wade, I'd just like to mention my supplementary and then deal with it in writing, if I may. It's simply to do with where the line is drawn between capital expenditure, which falls on the council as the owner, to whom therefore the value in any enhancement of the asset will accrue, and the tenant, who is of course not just a normal tenant, but is providing facilities that are often used by members of the public nipping in to use the loo, for example. So it's not just for the community centre itself, but I will put that in writing. Thank you.
Again, Councillor Gant to Councillor Tidball, capital spend on, oh no, sorry, we've done that, sorry. Councillor Wade to Councillor Tidball, supporting families during holiday season. Supplementary?
I do have a supplementary, which is very serious and urgent, but I will put it in an email to Councillor Tidball. It's about children who have no recourse to public funds and therefore, on the whole, are ineligible for free school meals. And that, with the Christmas holidays coming up, is a very serious problem. And we have to make sure that those children are looked after in Oxford, even if they're not looked after nationally. But I will ask Councillor Tidball.
Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Simmons to Councillor Brown, Oxford living wage adoption.
No supplementary on 31. I do on 32 though.
Okay. Councillor Simmons, Councillor Brown, Oxford living wage and University of Oxford.
Yes, no, thank you very much, Councillor Brown, for your persistence. I'm wondering whether we might offer an event specifically for the colleges, perhaps in, obviously, as we did with the sort of, you know, inviting some of the other Oxford living wage adoptees to sort of address them.
Thanks, Craig. I'm certainly happy to raise that with the college, the Conference of Colleges. I always say that the wrong way around, and also with the sort of colleges who are the good guys on this and who are already on that journey, or indeed have already achieved Oxford living wage status. So, I mean, to be honest, I'm very happy to use every and all mechanisms that are able to me to try and persuade colleges in Oxford, who I think have a duty almost above all others to do this. I mean, some of our colleges in Oxford are some of the wealthiest institutions in our city. And actually, I think it's quite shocking that they don't feel it's the right thing to do to employ local people at a decent living wage. So I think that it is part of our duty to try and remind them as often as we can that we do have an Oxford living wage in Oxford, and it would be a good thing for them to adopt it.
Thank you.
Okay, 33, Councillor Henwood to Councillor Brown, Oriel College Roads Working Party.
No supplementary, Lord Mayor.
34, Councillor Henwood to Councillor Brown, Oriel College Roads Working Party 2.
No supplementary.
35, I think that's the last one as well, Councillor Andrew Gant to Councillor Brown.
No supplementary. Nice to end with a nice short answer. Thank you.
Well, that ran smoothly. Okay, now on to the motions. So, no, it's not. Bear with me, sorry. Item 14, getting ahead of myself. Wanted to end the meeting really quick there. So 14, the Partnership Update Oxford Growth Board. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So we have periodically, we have, well, at every council meeting really, we have an update on one or other of our partnerships, and the Oxfordshire Growth Board is one of our major partnerships, and actually through the paper that you have in front of you, this actually talks about how the partnerships sort of interlink, and how many of them come together in the Growth Board. I mean, I think it's important to say that the Growth Board in itself is not a decision-making body. It is a sort of visible example of how local councils and other local institutions in Oxford and Oxfordshire have come together in order to engineer infrastructure money and housing money into Oxfordshire. But the decision-making body for the Growth Board remains the individual councils that are part of that Growth Board. So I think that's probably the most important thing that I seek to get across today. But it has been a very useful body, I think, for bringing us together to discuss issues where we have issues in common. And I think through the working of the Growth Board, even in the time that short-ish period that I've been sitting on it, we have developed much closer relationships with key people in other councils. So, for instance, on the area that's always closest to my heart, housing, which is, as we know, a huge and awful problem for Oxford in particular, but for Oxfordshire generally, in terms of affordable housing and the huge pressure that there is for housing in Oxfordshire. We have managed to bring together all the leading councillors on housing in Oxfordshire together in the housing subgroup to really focus our minds on what we can do to sort of solve some of those intractable problems that we have around building enough housing, building housing that's of the right quality, building housing that meets current standards in terms of environmental needs. And so I think there are lots of really interesting ways in which we've come together. We also get reports through the Growth Board about our involvement in the Oxford-Cambridge ARC, and we appoint to the executive of the Oxford-Cambridge ARC from amongst our number of leaders on the Oxfordshire Growth Board. We have discussed at the Oxfordshire Growth Board the local industrial strategy, which is owned by the Oxfordshire Local Economic Partnership, which I've also reported back to this council about. And we have most recently discussed, again, something that's in the ownership, if you like, of Oxfordshire Local Economic Partnership, but has obviously had input from us all. We've discussed the Oxfordshire Economic Recovery Plan, which we have fed into through many different means, through the Growth Board, through the LEP, and also as a council. We also recently discussed England's Economic Heartland draft transport strategy and gave our views as a Growth Board, as well as the views that we have individually given as individual councils. And very importantly for Oxford and for Oxfordshire, through the Growth Board, and again working in these different partnerships, we were able to fund the Oxfordshire Rail Corridor Study, which is taking us, I was about to say taking us on a journey. I won't use that particular example, but it's taking us to where we hope to be in terms of being able to rebuild Oxford Station to make it a station that we can be proud of and that is a proper gateway to our city, as well as actually bringing in more lines into the city. So I was going to say there are a number of other things I could talk about, but I will stop there. Thank you. I don't actually know if I formally need a seconder, as this is a report for noting. So,
for noting.
Yeah.
Are there any questions from the floor? Okay, we have Councillor John Tanner.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and congratulations on your becoming Lord Mayor. 18 months. I just wanted to.
I'm just going to interject you there. Just John, we can't hear you. I don't know if it's your microphone.
Many people, Lord Mayor, would think that was a great.
Turn your volume up, John.
Can you hear me now?
Very faintly.
Right. I shall speak as loudly as I can. Can you hear me now?
No.
Then there seems little that I can do. I'll put something in the chat.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, Councillor Dick Wolf.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yeah, I'm not a member of the Growth Board Scrutiny Committee. In the sense, I'm like most of the councillors in this meeting, sort of backbencher. And I have to say, thank you ever so much for the report. It was really very good, very detailed. But I did feel by the time I got to the end of it that I'd just done a round with Tyson Fury. I went through it again and dug out all the different groups, strategies, and plans. Here's the list. There's 34 of them. Different strategies, plans, groups, quangos, prospectuses, strategies, boards, partnerships, in just falling over themselves. And when I see that sort of thing, I find myself thinking, getting a little bit paranoid and thinking this is what they have called a confusopoly. It's a conspiracy to keep people in the dark by having so many people involved in so many quangos. I really can't get any perspective on this at all. And my question really is to try and get the council and through the ordinary councillors, the public, to get some sense of perspective on this. This is a report of the Growth Board, which from what Councillor Susan's just said, seems to sit at the centre of it, but I don't know whether it does, because I don't really have a diagram that gives me a sense of what's at the centre of it. I don't really have a sense, and I think Councillor Brown's tried to answer this, as to whether the politicians are in charge or whether actually the bureaucracies and the quangos are in charge. And in the middle of all that, where are the fault lines? What are the central issues?
Councillor Wolf, your time's running out.
Yeah, okay, you've got the general gist, I think.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you. Well, I'm always happy to knock down a conspiracy theory whenever I meet one, because I don't believe in conspiracy theories, and nor do I think there is any conspiracy here. I think it's very clear that actually democracy and democratically elected politicians are in charge. As I said earlier, the Growth Board is really only a sum of its parts. It is the case that people that each authority has its democratically elected leader sitting on that body, but actually all the real decisions are taken by the individual councils. We come together and we work in partnership where we can, where we have common interests, we work together. And you're right, there are a lot of different partnerships in Oxfordshire, and it is a very effective way of working to find areas that we have in common and to work together to deliver them. And I think that is a good thing, and that we need to do more of it rather than less. It is always really important, I think, to keep the democratic accountability, and that's one of the reasons why we bring these partnership reports to council, so that people can hold us to account and ask questions. But the individual decisions that are made as part of sitting on the Growth Board are brought to council, and the documents go through consultation, public consultations, and also have considerable input from each individual council.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Appreciate that. John Tanner, Councillor John Tanner, he's just asked if he could speak again, so I'm going to allow him to speak. You can ask your question.
Can you hear me now?
Unfortunately, I mean, yes.
I'm one of the all-party representatives on the Growth Board scrutiny, and I want to underline exactly what the leader has just laid out, that this is a very sensible body. It doesn't take any decisions in secret. I've never known a more open group than the Growth Board, and the councillors from all the authorities in Oxfordshire meet together to quiz the Growth Board on its decisions. And it's simply nonsense to say that this is something secret that is being done behind the backs of the people. What it does do, is that the Growth Board, is that it brings about very sensible cooperation between councils led by different parties from different parts of the.
So, Councillor Tanner, this is a comment rather than a question, is it?
It is absolutely. I'm asking the leader whether she agrees with me, it seems to me that the growth board is so much better than the government's sometimes suggested alternative of abolishing lots of councils and having just one monolith, which really would be closed to the public.
Thank you very much, Councillor
Does she
Tanner.
agree? Thank you.
Thank you.
Who could disagree with Councillor Tanner?
Okay, let's leave it there. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Councillor Gantz.
Yep, thank you. I'll try and be brief. First of all, just to say that from what I heard, Councillor Wolf wasn't saying it was secret or a conspiracy. He was saying it's confusing, which I think is true. First of all, can I just say that, well, first of all, can I pay tribute to the contribution of all my colleagues on the scrutiny panel? And this is a panel, by the way, Dick, not a committee. It's a small detail, but it's an important one for various reasons.
Questions?
Yep. Okay, I'll get to it. Don't interrupt, please. I've lost my thread now. Yes, Councillor Tanner and Councillor Simmons joining me representing this council on that panel. Can I say, first of all, it's very welcome that this has come to this council at all, which is one of the things that the scrutiny panel wanted, was a proper reporting back system to councils in view of the decision-making process that John Tanner has just described. This is a very wide-ranging report. It mentions a large number of other reports and other bodies, as Dick has said. So my questions are around some of the recent work and some of the overall direction of the Growth Board. Paragraph 8 of our report refers to changes to the timing of some elements of the growth deal, which was always a challenging element of the deal even before COVID. Could the leader give us an update on the effect of those, particularly on the associated freedoms of flexibilities, particularly the one around land supply? And in addition, how does the retimetables of the Oxfordshire Plan 2050 tie up with the effort to align local plans? Two other quick ones, if I may. I hope the leader would join me in making sure that we get plenty of consultation, particularly among young people, for a plan which is going to run until 2050.
30 seconds, Councillor Gantz.
Thank you. Clearly will affect the younger generation in our county more than it will the rest of us. And my final question is, does she know whether her fellow council leaders have reported back to their elected members in the way that she is doing today?
Thank you, Andrew. I'll start with the last first, if I may, which is on the subject of whether my fellow council leaders have reported back to their respective councils. And in a sense, I think I'd just refer you back to my first response to Dick, which is to make it clear that the Growth Board isn't a decision-making body, and therefore it is up to each individual council to decide how they report back to their own councils. And we have always taken the view on this council that it's the right thing to do to report back to the council that appoints us to outside bodies on what happens on those outside bodies, particularly when they're really significant bodies like this one, having discussions about really important issues, not making decisions. Yeah, nearly said that, but it's not correct. So I just wanted to then pick up on some of the other issues that you've raised. So you asked if there was any update on item 8 on the report, and I'm afraid there isn't at this stage. Still waiting to hear news on that. And finally, your issue on consultation, I completely agree with you. It's something that I fed in from a very early point whenever we've been discussing 2050 plans, and as we did in the city when we first started talking about our vision for 2050, we made it particularly a significant part of our consultation to talk to young people in the city, because absolutely it will be their city in 2050, not ours, and it is really important to understand and hear their views, and I think that will be a very important part of the consultation as we go forward.
Thank you.
So I was just put on mute then. Sorry. So again, we're to note the report. We're agreeing to note this, aren't we? We don't need a formal vote. Okay, I've got that right. Okay. Thank you very much. And we move now to item 15, the scrutiny committee update, and we have Councillor Andrew Gant.
Sorry, Lord Mayor, I don't wish to usurp your privileges, but you did say we'd break at 6:30. Do you want to do that?
No, I think we'll quickly take the scrutiny report and then we'll
Okay.
break. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, of course. I don't want to add anything much to the report that's in front of members, just to say that it is, as the report says, reporting on the work covering 3 meetings. On the 1st of September, I'd like to thank my Vice Chair, Councillor McManus, for taking that meeting, and the meeting on 6th of October, which looked at an air quality status report and an annual update of the tourism review group, slightly delayed for the reasons that we all understand. And then on the 3rd of November, waterways, the report actually hadn't arrived, and then the street naming and numbering policy. So that's just to top and tail what we've done. My thanks as always to our excellent officers. There's also reports from the various panels and review groups, which I won't comment on because I'm not on them. I'm happy to take any questions or refer them on if members wish.
Okay, well, I'll just throw my weight in to thank you and Councillor McManus and all the officers for the scrutiny work. Really appreciate it. Okay, we have Councillor Liz Wade.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. It's a question about paragraph 12, the Tourism Review Group Update Report. And my question is that the Scrutiny Committee were keen to hear more from city officers about how the changes in the city centre would impact on tourism, which is obviously going down the tubes at the moment. And they were hoping to have an update before the end of this year, which is now almost upon us. I was wondering if you can tell us whether you have had an update, and if not, when you're expecting to receive it. Thank you.
No, what we had is updates on the Cabinet response to the recommendations in the original report. And if I may now speak wearing my hat as chair of the original review group, I did at the time express a little disappointment in the level of support offered to those recommendations. And the updates have not always made up the lost ground, if you like. I mean, recommendation 1 was that the council convenes with partners, including Experience Oxfordshire, to develop, and the response, the update response, agreed that this will be pursued as part of the economic strategy and city vision and plan. No mention of a specific relationship with Experience of Oxfordshire at all. And without going through them all in great detail, I think that, well, I mean, members can read those responses for themselves, but that was certainly something that was discussed at that meeting, was the extent of the buy-in to the recommendations made by the review group 18 months ago.
Thank you. And we've got Councillor Ross Smith. Quick question.
Yeah, it is a question. Yeah, it is a question. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to attend the scrutiny meeting. I would like to have done, in fact, actually, when you considered the street naming and numbering policy and things. I think you were looking at the policy there. Can I ask, was there any mention made, a recommendation that the local members always be consulted and involved with new street names?
I think as chair of scrutiny, I'd rather not get drawn into commenting on the actual content, which is a slight way of saying I can't remember. But
I can remember.
Am I allowed to refer that to the cabinet member concerned? Lord
Yes,
Mayor?
yes, please do. Yes,
Councillor Chapman,
yeah,
remember to refer back to the Lord Mayor, okay? Don't talk over yourself through me, please. Thank you. Over to you, Councillor Chapman.
First reprimand of the new term, I can see. Councillor Smith, yes, obviously, yeah, there is built into the policy referral and consultation with local councillors, city, parish council where appropriate, those who have a particular interest in the area, those who have historical knowledge. So that is built into the policy throughout.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do you wish to sum up, Andrew? Councillor Gant, I don't think you need to, do you?
Not at all, unless any of the chairs of any panels have got anything they wish to bring to council's attention.
I see no hands up. Okay, the time is 6:35, only 5 minutes ahead ourselves. What I'll do, actually, we were going to wait for half an hour. What I'm asking for is for everyone to come back for 7 o'clock. I think 25 minutes is enough if everyone's in agreement. Right.
Lord Mayor.
Thank you. See you at 7 o'clock.
If you want to turn video off and mute, that's probably easier than leaving and coming back.
Hiya, Mark. It was still live on YouTube, so I just wanted to say well done on chairing the meeting and congratulations on being appointed.
Congratulations, Mark. I'm so sorry I wasn't in your reception today because I had something else urgent to do. So well done on the meeting. Thank you.
Oh, I just realised actually I was on mute. Thank you both. Sorry, I did reply, but it was on mute. See you in a moment.
Hi, Mark.
Who was that?
David, just can I have a quick question? Is that all right?
Councillors, you are still...
No, because we're on. No. Can you send me a quick text, David, if possible?
Yeah.
Lord Mayor, when you are ready to begin, most councillors are back and our speaker is with us. And Catherine will unmute her when you're ready.
Okay, welcome back to part 2 of the council. So item 13. First, I just want to make sure that Janet Phillips is ready before I call upon her to talk.
She is present and we can unmute her microphone so that you can check if you would like.
Yes, please.
Yes, hi, I'm here, Janet.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we have one public address. And the address is by Janet Phillips in support of motion 16A on improving coronavirus testing and tracing. So Janet, in your own time, take time. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you and good evening. Liz Perrett, Isabel Tucker and I have been campaigning throughout the pandemic that we own it and keep our NHS public for local testing and tracing that is run and carried out by our public health authorities. These are the bodies with the necessary expertise and experience and the vital community knowledge. At the same time, we've been calling for the misleadingly named NHS Test and Trace to be shut down. In our view, it has been not only a scandalous misuse of public money involving corruption and cronyism, but a disastrous failure as far as bringing the virus under control is concerned. Though expert after expert has repeated the message that testing to be effective needs to be located within our communities, it soon became clear that the government would rather go on tinkering with NHS Test and Trace in an attempt to fix it than close it down and transfer funding to local authorities. But in our view, NHS Test and Trace cannot be fixed because its model is fundamentally flawed. The only way to fix testing and tracing in the UK is finally to hand the money and work over to our local public health bodies. In recent months, the government has talked about more local involvement, but so far that has meant passing the names of people who test positive and whom NHS Test and Trace failed to contact to local councils, in many cases several days after their test. Paid staff, as in the local contact tracing operation set up by our own DPH and City Council, as well as teams of volunteers. Sorry, there's interference. Are you hearing me okay? Yeah, okay, fine, I'll carry on. Paid staff, as in the local contact tracing operation set up by our own DPH and City Council, as well as teams of volunteers in other parts of the country, have been doing wonderful work reaching most of the people handed over to them. And they are then in a position to provide information on how to self-isolate as well as support. In effect, though, these local operations are just mopping up for NHS Test and Trace. The information on contact trace needs to be fed back into the central system. So far then, our local bodies have had no influence over the shape and scope of the programme of testing and tracing. Many councils have recognised the foolishness of the current setup and have been frustrated by not being able to do more. We decided that the way forward was for local authorities to show that they are serious about wanting proper local operations in order to really make a difference. That a loud clamour for funding and resources to be diverted to local authorities might finally get the government to see sense and take the necessary action. We're delighted that as a result of our discussions, Craig Simmons, Louise Upton and Andrew Gant have proposed a cross-party motion to the Council, which, if passed, would enable the first steps to be taken towards gaining higher level support to push the government, perhaps in partnership with other local authorities, for the means to set up a fully fledged local programme of testing and tracing. We urge you all to vote in favour of this motion. But time is of the essence. Some might think that with several vaccines now looking effective, including the one developed in our own city, and rolling out of vaccination imminent, it's too late to be bothering now to fix the testing and tracing mess. It could, however, be many more months before everyone who needs to be vaccinated is vaccinated. In that time, especially as adherence to basic social distancing and hygiene breaks down, there will be more strain on the NHS, more economic loss, and more death. Having good testing and tracing could prevent much of this. And another reason for getting testing and tracing right now is so hopefully we have it right for the future. So the message is clear that this work belongs always with our public health bodies, not with private companies that come forward with no expertise, but we believe rake in handsome profits while failing even to do properly what they've been contracted to do. Fixing local and public testing and tracing now would be a significant victory against those who want to outsource more of our health services. With Brexit proper only weeks away and the danger of all manner of new trade deals, the matter of keeping our NHS public is also one of urgency. What could a locally run testing and tracing operation do? Decide who should be tested, where and how.
30 seconds left.
Yes,
Sorry
okay.
to interrupt.
Choose which groups should have access to repeated testing, whether they have symptoms or not. Use public labs for cheaper and faster results. Provide financial and moral support to people who need to self-isolate. Address issues of inequality and how they contribute to transmission and self-isolation problems. Deploy fast tests in specified situations, involve GPs, and develop strategies for reducing infection throughout Oxfordshire to zero. So please vote for motion 16A. Once passed, real work will begin. We would urge you then, without delay, to begin discussions with our DPH and County Council and together to start mapping out what a local operation will look like. Set in motion the preparations for the local testing and tracing programme we hope we will all soon have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Janet. Really do appreciate that. Well done, well said. Okay, I call upon Councillor Louise Upton for a reply.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you very much indeed, Janet, for coming along to speak to us this evening. I think many of us, perhaps most of us here, would agree with everything you have said. I believe that you and colleagues are involved with the University of Oxford's in-house test and trace system for staff and students, which is just, it's a great model, and it just shows you what you can do locally. So thank you for all your efforts on that. And with regards to you coming along to speak this evening, it's just very, very important for councillors to know that we have the support of the people in the city when we, come and propose motions at council. And this issue really could not be more important, because this is about the health of the people who live here. It's about life and death. So we're going to speak more in the motion coming up. So I'll leave it there, but just to say thank you very much indeed, again, for coming along this evening.
Yeah, yep, thank you. Sorry, just bear with me. Okay, item 16, motions on notice. We have a cross-party motion, improving coronavirus testing and tracing. So I call Councillor Upton.
Okay, thank you. So, until we have a vaccine, the only way we can stop COVID-19 spreading is if we keep infected people away from non-infected people. Countries that have successfully implemented comprehensive testing and tracing have managed to keep their numbers of COVID deaths lower than countries which haven't. So what is the record on this in the UK? Well, it's not good, is it? Per capita, we're doing worse than many, many other countries. Millions of people have been infected. And if that was the only thing that was going wrong, well, that would be embarrassing enough. But over 58,000 people have died from this as well. That is people dying. So what should we be doing about this? Well, as the saying goes, I wouldn't start from here. What a sensible government would have done would have been to plan from the start a test and trace system that made use of the expertise that local government, local public health, local GPs have. I mean, our environmental health officers, for example, are professional track and tracers. You know, they find people who've been in contact with a disease. That's what they do for a living. Our local GPs know their patients and who need to be particularly vigilant for certain symptoms, for example. Local authorities in general, let's remember, we're the people providing the support for people who need it to self-isolate. You know, if it's us doing the testing and tracing, we could couple notification of a positive result with the offer of the real practical support that will allow people to do self-isolation. Okay, that's what I do. What I wouldn't do is give £12 billion to a company with no track record in this area to hire a lot of people who've never done this before, ask them all to sit at home and call people hundreds of miles from where they live. And I wouldn't do that, not least because of the very well documented toll this takes on the mental health of the isolated individuals who are having to call up people who could be extremely ill or distressed and give them this bad news. But I wouldn't do it because it was never going to be as good as getting people with local knowledge to do it. You know, the national system is already handing us their failures, which we do sort out. We find these people. So we're not asking for them to hand over the entire system to us tomorrow. We're asking for the government to immediately start a proper phased transition, allocating the necessary level of resourcing so we can do it properly to local authorities. Because as I mentioned at the beginning, until we've got a vaccine rolled out, we have to get an effective testing and tracing regime to work. And just on that note of a vaccine, I want to add my thanks to those of Councillor Brown from the beginning for the magnificent work of the Oxford Vaccine Group, which I think as a city we're all incredibly proud of. So I urge everybody to support this motion. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Louise Upton. Okay, I'll call upon Councillor Craig Simmons.
Yes, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. And just to add my thanks to Janet Phillips, Liz Perrotts, Isabel Tucker, Keep Our NHS Public and We Own It for raising this important issue and for engaging with councillors cross-party. I think it's been a very productive discussion. And a great pleasure to second this motion. No one would disagree that the test and trace system is broken. It's failed us all and allowed coronavirus to run riot amongst the population. According to Professor Anthony Costello, who's a former director of the World Health Organization Institute of Global Health, he said, and I quote, "The whole thing is public health malpractice, and it's being designed and led by government ideology. They wanted a private system, it failed, and we need to keep saying that." And indeed, that's what this motion does. It keeps saying that, reminds people. Because the two key points this motion is trying to address is a demonstrable need for more local and public control of testing and tracing. We cannot know how many of the 58,000 people who lost their lives might have survived with a better system, but we need to learn the lessons now, as has been said, to get ready for future public health crises. A local decentralized system would not only be more effective at targeted testing and more successful tracing, as trials have proved, but allow for better integration, as Councillor Upton said, of support services locally and the utilisation of local groups in support of that, as has happened with the university. And also be more accountable. And in the government's haste to privatise large parts of the test and trace system, they swept aside accountability and opened the door to corruption. In a recent damning report from the National Audit Office, which covered £18 billion of COVID-related procurement, they said again, and I quote, "They found specific examples where there's insufficient documentation on key decisions or how risks such as perceived or actual conflicts of interest have been identified or managed." In other words, they couldn't really account for all the money or that there was no corruption involved. And we know from Imperial College that a well-functioning test and trace system reaches about 80% of contacts, can reduce the R number by about a quarter. It really is a very critical tool in the armoury against coronavirus. Comparisons can be made with Germany, where test and trace was far more successful. At the beginning of this pandemic, I spoke to my counterpart when I was Lord Mayor in our twin town of Bonn to learn more about their system. And indeed, their system was exactly the sort of thing that's asked for.
30 seconds, Craig.
A decentralised system. So I don't have time to speak to all the points in the motion, and the benefits of the scheme are clearly laid out in the text. But I do just want to add my thanks to the last part, on the last part of the motion about the amazing work of the Oxford Vaccine Group, and I do hope that we get the chance when things get back to normal to thank them and others, public health staff, NHS, council staff, for extraordinary support during these challenging times. So please support this motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Craig Simmons. I call upon Councillor Andrew Gant.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. As this is cross-party, I'll be brief, so because we all agree. My thanks also go to our speaker, Janet Phillips, and her colleagues, Liz Peretz and Isabel Tucker, for raising this issue and bringing it to us in such a coherent and convincing form. I fully support the aims and the detail of the motion, so no need to go through them all again. I think equally this is also the moment to applaud the contribution of our community here in Oxford so far to testing. A number of people, colleagues, have made reference to the scheme being rolled out by Oxford University. Our students in Oxford have had a bad press over COVID and coronaviruses, and in a number of instances, quite rightly. However, as colleagues will know, the vast majority of students have coped with an extremely difficult and challenging situation with immense patience and professionalism. Colleges have gone out of their way to redirect staff into different tasks, which, as so often in this crisis, have often not been very well defined or very well organized. And I think that we should give our thanks to our community of students and teachers across the whole of our education sector, and indeed beyond, as well, of course, to our own council workforce and to so many others, including members of this council and so many others who've been involved in the work of the Oxford Hub and so many other organisations. I fully agree with the criticism of the government. Its approach is characterised by dumping responsibility for the fallout of the crisis on local councils without providing the necessary support in terms of clear, timely, consistent decision-making or indeed funding. Response to COVID-19 also requires cooperation and politicians to join together and work together for the greater good, an approach which seemed to pass by Oxfordshire's 4 Tory MPs when they failed to back up all council leaders in our county of all political parties in following the call from our Director of Public Health for the county to enter into Tier 2 in time for school half term, a failure on their part, and something that I'm sure the all-party
30 seconds, Andrew.
The all-party parliamentary group on coronavirus, chaired by Oxford Western Abingdon MP Layla Moran, will want to look into. I wholeheartedly agree with the commendation at the end of this motion of the work of our Oxford Vaccine Group, led by Professor Andrew Pollard and his team, and I commend this motion to Council.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gant. I think it's only right now, I mean, we've got cross-party agreement, because we do have some independents in here. I am going to give you the opportunity if you want to say anything. So the floor is yours, whether that be Councillor Mick Haynes or Councillor David Henwood.
Thank you. I agree with all the commentary. This is something that I will be supporting. And thank you for everybody for bringing this forward and a positive attitude towards it. Thank you.
And Councillor Hosnia Jafari Mabini.
Thank you very much. During these months of suffering and isolation, there have also been moments of quiet contemplation, and I found myself pondering about the essence of our NHS. What is it that makes working in the NHS such a privilege? And it's clear to me that it's all about trust, and the trust placed in us by vulnerable 80-year-olds and their loved ones to care for them, the best of our ability when faced with a sudden harrowing diagnosis. The trust that we will always put their health and well-being first. Our local GPs, community nurses, public health teams and volunteers have the trust of the vulnerable, the elderly, our poorly paid key workers who are rarely seen and truly heard and who have disproportionately suffered the worst impacts of the pandemic. This inherent value has sadly been treated with utter disdain by this government. They've burned that trust by handing over contracts to their mates down the pub, by rewarding a failing test and trace system to the tune of £12 billion, whilst our local add-on teams have been left to chase the most vulnerable. They've burned that trust by defending the indefensible, the trips to Barnard Castle and the ideology that places lining the pockets of shambolic corporations above our health and well-being. With all that in mind, would you trust an unrecognised remote phone call or an app beeping that you need to isolate? warnings that come to you late or too many times, and sometimes with no human voice at all. All this is reflected in the data, with Serco managing to trace around 60% of contacts, while this stands at over 98% of cases for those managed by local health protection teams. The Health Scrutiny Committee this week revealed what we in the NHS knew already. The privatised tracing system has consistently failed to trace the vulnerable and the elderly. It has failed to give integrated detailed advice and welfare support. All this whilst our brilliant GPs have been kept in the dark. They truly know the barriers to accessing tests, the vulnerable in each household, and the subtle signs of breathlessness and confusion. The pandemic has been unprecedented, but the ideological corporate-driven response to it is long-standing, and it has exacerbated existing inequalities.
30 seconds.
It's no coincidence that this ideology has led to unnecessary death and suffering amongst the most vulnerable in society. The poorly paid multi-ethnic working classes who've simultaneously been ignored by policymakers whilst often holding aloft the vital services we all rely on. It's time that we follow others in the Northeast and run our own trusted, fully integrated test and tracing system, which treats the public as a trusted partner and offers wraparound support for all, and especially those overexposed to this virus. Please support the motion.
Thank you very much. And thank you all of you, especially Councillor Louise Upton, who's brought this motion to us today. Okay, we're all in agreement, but I think what we should do, in all fairness, is we're all agreed, but show the blue hands, just so we can make sure we don't miss anybody out. So if we can vote by raising your blue hand.
Okay, so just to confirm, this is all those in support of the motion as put forward.
I just
and if I can.
Yes, Clark, Jennifer,
Sorry.
I just have three. Councillor Linda Smith, Mike Gotch and Pat Kennedy. Can you see them at the bottom? I can't see their hands.
I can. If I can just find them on my screen. Councillor Mike Gotch, you have a thumb up. Councillor Linda Smith, you have a thumb up, and Councillor Pat Kennedy has raised her hand. So on that basis, that is everybody that I can see has voted in favour. If I've missed anyone, please shout.
Well done.
Okay, that's carried.
Thank you very much. Thank you all again. Okay, that moves us on to B, the second motion, domestic abuse and COVID-19 workplace community safety. And we have the proposer, Councillor Shaista Aziz, and then afterwards we have the seconder, Sian Taylor. So the floor is yours, Councillor Aziz, up to you.
Thank you. November the 25th marks the start of the UN's annual 16 days of activism to end gender-based violence, which concludes on December the 10th. This year, the UN is focusing on the impact of COVID-19 on violence against women and girls, which it calls the shadow pandemic. The issue of violence against women and girls needs to be taken out of the shadows and tackled at its roots, here in Oxford, in the UK and across the world. Here in the UK, according to the femicide census, at least 95 women have been killed by men, or a man is a principal suspect so far in their case this year in 2020. This includes 5 women who were killed between November the 12th and November the 20th. On average, 2 women every week are killed by a current or former partner. During the lockdown, an estimated 40,000 people have contacted the National Domestic Abuse Helpline. The overwhelming majority are women. There has, however, been a rise in cases of domestic abuse reported by men and people who identify as LGBTQI. There's also been an increase in people who are impacted by domestic abuse who do not have secure immigration status. People who are also experiencing homelessness have seen an increase in abuse, which is making them homeless. This motion is about sending a clear signal to everyone in our city that we are a city that understands that domestic abuse is not a personal issue. Domestic abuse is a community safety issue, it's a public health issue, and it's a workplace issue as well. The motion was written after listening to women and men impacted by domestic abuse across our city, and also speaking to many brilliant people working across Oxford in organisations who are supporting people impacted by domestic abuse. The lockdown has exacerbated the risks that those living with domestic abuse face every day. Home is not a safe place for people who are impacted by domestic abuse. This includes children. And for many people, overwhelmingly women, the lockdown never ends. Lockdown is something that goes on 365 days a year, regardless of if there is a pandemic or not. This motion clearly outlines some very clear asks for the council in terms of what we would like the council to do. And I don't have long, so I'm just going to quickly emphasize a couple of points. So the first one is that we want to see the development of a domestic abuse motion, a domestic abuse workplace policy, not only in the council, but for the council to also encourage Oxford's workplaces to do the same. We want to see trade unions and employers across our city understanding, as I said, that domestic abuse is not a personal matter. And I'd just like to end by thanking everybody involved in helping develop this motion. This has included survivors across our city. And as I said, those people in organisations across our city who work on this issue day in, day out. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. And also, I'll just say this for you because I don't realise you ran out of time, but the council also thanks Oxford's frontline domestic abuse workers, charities and organisations for their life-saving work. Yeah, this is a fantastic motion. Okay, do we have a seconder? Councillor Sian Taylor, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. I am really pleased to have the opportunity to second this motion. As most of you will be aware, I'm a health visitor working in the city, and I have had dealings with some women who have both been victims and, more importantly, survivors of some truly horrendous situations. And I am deeply moved and humbled by all of their stories, and really pleased that I am able to bring, to support something which is offering practical solutions to a really difficult and painful problem. Domestic abuse is a particularly hideous manifestation of abuse. It takes place in the home, a private space which should be all of our sanctuaries, and it's perpetrated by somebody who the victim has a close relationship and usually who loves. And I think it's really important for us to remember that this is an intimate relationship, and it's also deeply damaging. And the consequences of domestic abuse are huge, both in terms of the impact on the individual, on their children, to the extent that domestic abuse is recognised as a children's safeguarding issue, and more widely in terms of societal costs, the costs to the police, to health and other services. And this is obviously, there's a financial cost because this is taking up resources, but there is also a personal cost for those who work with survivors of this sort of crime. And I would like to thank Shyster and Lord Mayor for, I'd like to join you in thanking all those who offer help and support to the victims of domestic abuse. It's not an easy job to do. Regardless of our party political allegiances, or for those who sit as independents not, I am confident that all of us in this chamber are committed to find ways to improve the lives of our citizens. As Shyster has said, domestic abuse is an issue of personal safety, of public health and workplace safety. This motion offers the opportunity to improve in all these areas, both for those working within the council and hopefully more widely. We've seen the success of the Oxford Living Wage. Hopefully we will also be able to look on Oxford City Council as a lead in terms of domestic abuse for other workplaces in the city. And I hope that you will all feel able to offer your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sian Taylor. Okay, we've got a couple of people who want to talk. We have Councillor Chapman. No, we don't, sorry. In the pre-meet, we agreed Councillor Craig Simmons first, and then we'll take Councillor Chapman, Councillor Azad and Councillor Wade, and we'll draw a line under that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank the mover and proposer and seconder of this motion for bringing it to council. Thank you very much for doing this and highlighting this really important issue. And of course, I'd like to add my thanks to those you've already expressed, to our frontline workers, charities and organisations for their life-saving work. My only point was really a little bit of a question, which maybe you can address in your sort of summing up, is that, you know, the motion resolves to ask the head of business improvement to submit a report to cabinet with a number of very valid and important points that should be set out in that report. I'm just wondering how this fits in with the work of Domestic Abuse Review Group, which is obviously ongoing at the moment. I'm wondering whether you would agree that it makes sense for the review group to input into this cabinet report, or to work with the head of business improvement to do that. And I'm not sure whether that timing works in terms of what you had in mind, but it would make sense that we could probably make more forceful recommendations and make a more comprehensive report if we also added in all the research, the very valuable research that the Domestic Abuse Review Group is doing, which of course you chair and Councillor Aziz and I sit on.
Thank you, Craig Simmons. Okay, we have 3 speakers. New points only, please, and keep it brief. I realise this is a really important motion, but as all the others following after as well. So, Councillor Nigel Chapman.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor, and congratulations to you on your appointment. I fully support this motion. I'm coming to it slightly wearing my cabinet hat as a corporate services portfolio holder, because it would be part of my responsibility, I suspect, in the end, to help develop this policy. The statistics are very stark and disturbing. And one of the side effects of this COVID crisis and working from home has been that more and more people are not coming into the office. And because they're not coming to the office, they're not able to share, often in confidence, some of their concerns and worries. And they are left isolated, working on their own, often 5 days a week. And this is something we're going to have to balance out when we've got the overall balance between working from home and coming into our offices as and when they open in the future. I would like this policy to support staff, to signpost the ways to good legal and practical advice, and in extreme cases, a place of safety, of course, because sometimes that is necessary. To offer training for our teams in this area. It is, as Councillor Taylor said, disturbing and difficult and very draining for staff sometimes to work in this area. And therefore we need to give people all the tools we can to help them do this well and with confidence. And in the end, you know, it comes down to almost a basic right, really, that, you know, we want our staff to be productive, we want them to do well, we want them to contribute to our work. But if they're coming to work in fear of going home in the evening to a place of danger, how can they possibly contribute the full amount of what they could if they were going back to a place of safety? So those are my comments, and that's why I
Thank you very much, Councillor Chapman. Appreciate that. Okay, Councillor Jamila Azad.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And I thank you, Councillor Shaista Aziz and Councillor Sean Taylor, to bring this motion to Council, which is a really, really important motion at this time. I worked in this field for many, many years, and I know what problem women face and what their not only from their partner, but some of the families itself. And just recently, I heard that women who are suffering domestic violence at this time, difficult time of a pandemic, and when they are discharged, they are sent to the same partner and same families. So we need to do some more work on this domestic abuse, and I would like whole council to do something, some action on these domestic abuse women, and please support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And last one, Councillor Liz Wade.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. This motion is very timely, given the additional stress placed upon households over the last 8 months, and thank you for proposing it, Councillor Aziz. We should remember that domestic abuse comes in all shapes and forms, not all of it recognised by the victim or indeed by the perpetrator. Men as well as women suffer abuse, and children often at second hand when they are in an abusive household. Unless the children are very robust, the invisible damage they suffer may mark their own relationships for the rest of their lives. I have a particular concern which hasn't been mentioned so far, and that is women who have no recourse to public funds. They will often not be able to access a bed in a refuge because they won't be eligible for the housing benefit that they need to pay for that bed. This is iniquitous, and as a country, we need to do better. And it is something that we need to lobby the government about urgently. I hope everyone in this chamber will feel able to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I did say I was going to end it there, but I realise Councillor Sim hasn't spoken, so I'm going to give it benefit of the doubt and give you a minute, if that's okay. Sorry to be so short.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and can I add my congratulations to your new appointment. I just wanted to say, obviously, 100% supportive of this motion. It was over 40 years ago that women started to campaign for domestic violence and domestic abuse to be stopped, to us stop seeing it as a private woe and see it as a matter of public policy. And I think, you know, we've come a long way, but we've a long way to go. But this is a huge step in the right direction. And so I want to commend those people that have come up with this motion, and I'm delighted to support it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tom Hayes, unfortunately, I'm not going to let you speak because we've had enough speakers already, and I'm just conscious of the other motions, and it's all been eloquently put by everybody. And I'm hoping we're all in support of this. So, Jennifer, we can either do a roll call, or we can make it easier. We can just
sum up.
Sorry. Oh yes, my apologies. Yes, yeah, should do. Yes.
Thank you very much. Sorry, Councillor Hayes, I'd be very happy to give you my time, but I have to sum up, so apologies. So first of all, I just want to thank everybody here for supporting this motion coming to full council. I also want to thank everyone who's spoken this evening for not only speaking so clearly, but also for the work that you've been doing over many years on this issue. Councillor Sims, thank you for your question. I fully agree with you that the Domestic Abuse Review Group, which you're part of, as is Councillor Wade and others, we should absolutely make some strong and clear recommendations, and they should go to the head of business improvement. And I think time frame wise, we should be looking to do this as soon as our review group finishes. So I think that's due to end towards the beginning of next year. Also, Councillor Wade, thank you for your excellent point about those with no recourse to public funds. The motion does highlight those individuals who have insecure immigration status, who are particularly being impacted by not being able to get any help. But I fully agree with you that this is an urgent need, this area needs to be focused on very urgently. So thank you for raising that. And just to say that I'm really happy that this motion, that my colleagues here fully understand why we need to pass this motion at this present time. We're already into the second lockdown. We do not know when this pandemic is going to end. And we know ourselves as councillors that we have received an increase in in people contacting us, primarily women asking for assistance. And I just want to go on record to thank Councillor Mike Rowley, who I have had quite a lot of contact with in the past few months, in particular on this issue, especially around those who need to find housing in order to be able to leave a perpetrator. So I just want to thank everybody here, and to those listening who are being impacted by domestic abuse, I hope you understand clearly that the councillors here want to be of assistance, and we want to make sure our city is a safe place for everyone. So thank you very much, everyone.
Yes, thank you, appreciate that. And thank you, Councillor Tom Hayes, who's been ever so understanding. He's just left his message in the chat if those want to read that later on. Okay, if we're all in agreement, suggest we're going to use the blue hands rather than a roll call. So for those who are supporting the motion, can I see your blue hands, please?
Okay, so I have 41 blue hands in support, and I just need to locate Councillor Gotch. Can I just check if you're voting in support or against or abstaining?
In support.
in support. Thank you. That is 42 in support and no one not voting, so that's carried.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Just look at time. Okay, 7:40. Okay, that takes us to C, universal basic income. And proposer is Councillor Garden and seconder is Councillor Gant. So Councillor Garden, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. In December 1941, William Beveridge recognised the scale of the problems facing the country after 2 world wars, and so he challenged the government with a blueprint for banishing poverty then. As a result of his report, a Labour government introduced one of Britain's most cherished assets, our NHS. Almost 100 years later, we are once again faced with acute and fundamental challenges. Brexit has exposed the divisive cracks in our society, and the pandemic has unmasked the fundamental gaps in our welfare system. The climate emergency threatens our health and technology, in addition, our way of life, all adding fuel to the fire. We find ourselves in a debate tonight on an old idea supported by many great thinkers. It started 200 years ago when technology was taking away the jobs of people working in the textile mills and forcing them into the bottom poverty wages of other companies. Not unlike then, automation is having a similar effect today. That is, it is changing businesses or even closing them down, leaving many workers displaced who then need to start at the bottom again. One of the rationales of UBI is that it acts as a cushion and gives the opportunity, a security net, if you will, for retraining, whilst ensuring that nobody lacks the most basic needs. We'll never know what would have happened in the north when Thatcher closed down the mines, but I can't help but think that life may have been a bit more promising for many people and cities if a basic income was available. Universal credit, despite several adjustments, still falls short of what is needed and had done so even before the crisis. The most recent changes were made with the intention of making a complex system simpler, but the implementation has had huge problems. The United Nations report on poverty and deprivation paints a bleak picture of growing inequality and describes the negative impact universal credit had on many people it purported to support. A shameful picture for one of the wealthiest countries in the world. But rich or poor, we all know that people sometimes, often through no fault of their own, need a bit of help and compassion. The universal basic income idea is expanding the compassion to society as a whole. If a person has to worry about the basics of life,
30 seconds.
Food, shelter, camaraderie, purpose, life is just harder to live. A niggling worry about how you're going to feed the kids tomorrow, the existential terror of being evicted make life more difficult to live. We can't take a risk on starting the businesses you've dreamed of. You can't take the time to learn new skills, and you can't afford to follow your daughter into her imagination. It is time to remind ourselves that a life is not saved simply by avoiding death.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, call on seconder, Councillor Andrew Gant.
I'll reserve my right to speak later in the debate, if I may, Lord Mayor.
Okay, I'm also conscious of time. What I've got, those who want to speak, is Councillor Turner, Councillor Linda Smith, Councillor Richard Howlett, Councillor John Tunnett and Councillor Wolfe, and I won't be taking any more after these. So, Councillor Ed Turner.
Thanks very much, Lord Mayor, and congratulations. A starting point, please let me emphasise I believe that the UK welfare state is not generous enough. Universal credit has been a fiasco, but there are so many other ways it's broken. In my day job as an academic, I've written about the flaws of localised crisis loans and council tax support. I'm a passionate supporter of universalism in the provision of public services. But I also think our welfare state needs to recognise people's circumstances are different and to respond to that so that then it does offer different levels of support. After all, that's what we do in health services. We don't say to each person, go to a GP 5 times a year. Instead, you go to a GP if you need to. Let me illustrate this a bit more. At the moment, you get a different level of support from the welfare state, depending on your level of housing costs. That's right. A single level of universal basic income would either give a flat level of housing support, or more likely, it would take that out of the calculation and pay housing support, if necessary, as an extra to those who needed it. Some people have a disability and therefore get extra support. Not enough, in my view. A single level of UBI would give everyone, whether disabled or not, the same level of support, or more likely, it would take it out and pay it as an extra to those who needed it. The same goes for those with caring responsibilities. Obviously, at the moment, there's a carer's allowance, and the same point goes. And of course, there are people who are retired, so we don't expect them as a society to work anymore, and they get a pension. I doubt there'd be an appetite to take the pot that pays pensioners and spread it out towards everyone, regardless of how old they were. So instead, we'd probably take that out as well. What you're left with is this. If you do the right thing and you don't spread pensions, housing benefit, carers allowance around university, you're left with hardly anything to redistribute. The only thing you've got left to share out is unemployment support, which is just 1%, yes, 1% of the UK's welfare spend. If you wanted to put more into your UBI, you'd need to put in those bits which are specifically targeted at people's circumstances. I really don't see why I should be getting a share of the money which is currently paid out to someone getting housing benefit or carer's allowance or a disability benefit. Instead, what I'd like to know is if my circumstances became the same as theirs, I would be entitled to those benefits. Universal basic income is favoured by some on the left, who quite reasonably would like a more generous welfare state and ignore its regressive implications.
10 seconds.
Okay, but if we support that aim, and I think we should, let's give the money to those who need it and restore universal public services that have been run down. There are also many opponents of UBI, supporters of UBI on the right, who do it because they want to see welfare eroded. Let's support our public services, support those in need. Let's get rid of punitive welfare sanctions, but let's reject the fantasy, sometimes well-intentioned, of a universal basic income. It just doesn't work.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Appreciate that. Okay, I've just been brought to my attention that Councillor Smith didn't want to speak, so I'll take the next person on the list after that. But unfortunately, Mike, we're not going to get to you. So I call on Councillor Richard Howlett.
Hi there. Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor, and congratulations. And yeah, thank you, Councillor Garden, for bringing this. I think this is an idea for which the time has come. You know, coronavirus has shown us how people have been thrown into even starker poverty, and how we need to tackle the immense inequality that we've been living with for so long. And I think this is an important way to go about that. I think there's a few additional things that I'd particularly say about it, sort of extra benefits. One is how, if we have this underlying security net for people, people are better able to challenge poor working conditions. They have that comfort, that underlying safety net that can allow them to do that. It also rewards currently unpaid contributions that people make to society, whether that's through caring responsibilities or community work. This is a means of society recognizing those important contributions. Also, in terms of how it's implemented, this is clearly a cheaper means in terms of reducing bureaucracy compared to means-tested benefits. And then I guess I'd sort of speak to the point about universalism. That absolutely, I think universalism is, you know, one of the best, is part of the best of our current system. It's right that we have universal free access to healthcare and to education, and extending that universalism to people having the bare minimum to be able
30 seconds, Richard.
To be able to meet their basic needs feels important to me as well. And I think looking at all the other motions we talk about tonight, if we had universal basic income, whether it's on COVID, whether it's on domestic abuse, whether it's on homelessness, this could help us be in a much better situation as regards all of those things. And yeah, and then finally, I'd say I really do hope that my Labour colleagues will support this motion. Oxford would be joining, you know, one of many other Labour-led councils to show their support to this approach.
Thank you,
so,
Councillor
yeah,
Howlett.
I hope people will support it.
Thank you very much. And we have Councillor John Tanner.
Can you hear me this time, Lord Mayor? Yeah, Lord Mayor, I should be voting for this motion. And I think Councillor Turner makes some good points. But I think the factor he's leaving out is taxation. Now, I get a basic income as a pensioner. In fact, I get more than a basic income, and a lot of it is taxed off me. I suspect not quite enough to put to other things in society. And that's how we could deal with giving the basic income to everybody. But I think, as other speakers have said, this would put more bargaining power in the hands of people with their employers. People wouldn't be forced to starve back to work, to do casual so-called gig economy jobs on extremely low wages, because their basic needs would be catered for. It wouldn't be enough, and most people, I think, go to work not simply to stay alive. They go to work in order to make a contribution to society, to increase their wealth, to help their families. There's a whole quantity of reasons. So I think this basic income would be of great benefit. I think it is practical, and I think it's about time we gave it a go. I shall be voting for.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tanner. I'm only going to take two more now, Councillor Ros Smith and then Councillor Mike Gotch, and then we'll go back to Councillor Garden to sum up. Okay, floor's yours, Ros.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I didn't actually congratulate you when I spoke earlier this evening. I'm very sorry, I should have done. Congratulations, and I look forward to seeing you in your role as Lord Mayor. Thank you. Yeah, universal benefit income would actually help people who are having a career break as well too. And it's not something that's been mentioned this evening, although I think John Tanner sort of referred to it in a way. And I think that's important, actually. It also would help if you were, I'll just refer back to the motion that has just been agreed about domestic violence, for those women who are having to continue with household bills after their partner has been asked to leave or has been removed from the property. And I think that's something that we should take into consideration. So I think I'm very pleased to hear those that are speaking in favour of the universal income, basic income, and I look forward to supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Councillor Wolfe.
Thank you. I'll be brief, Lord Mayor. This has been Green Party policy for as long as I've been aware that the party existed, but it's not just a Green Party thing, of course. Brighton and Hove Labour members supported a motion which went through their council requesting a pilot. The same has been requested in Sheffield, Liverpool and Hull. I believe, if I'm right in thinking that we conducted a pilot on universal credit here in Oxford, so the very least we could do is to participate in any pilot of universal basic income. I hear some of the things that Councillor Turner has said, but there's a number of things that he's omitted. Councillor Tanner's already referred to one. The inefficiencies in the present system and the demeaning nature of the system, which is profoundly disempowering of so many people. And we have the strange anomalies that throw up. I mean, at the moment, people on universal credits have been given a 20% uplift until April, I believe. But people who are working in the gig economy, who are suffering more heavily than most as a result of the virus, are burning themselves out and are completely disadvantaged. The system has no flexibility, isn't able to cope with that. So the other thing to say is about the efficiencies that can be made. John Tanner referred to the taxation side of it. I mean, if there were an argument against it, I think it would be that there would be so many people working this appallingly cumbersome system at the moment that might be out of a job themselves. But you know, that UBI, in terms of its efficiency, is enormous. I think I've said enough. There'll be others wanting to speak too.
Thank you very much. Councillor Andrew Gant, he reserved his right. So Councillor Gant, to call on you to speak, please.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I won't add much because this has been the sort of informed, interesting debate that we've come to expect and value from this council. So thank you for colleagues. Various models and pilots have been tried. What they have in common is that they don't have very much in common. They're all different. There is a lot of detail that needs to be worked out. But certainly the proposal that my party has adopted as party policy doesn't replace welfare payments. It is in addition to. Richard used a good word, and the word is universalism. I think this is about what we consider to be universal. And that line has moved over the centuries. There was a time when it wasn't considered that everybody had a right to education, or that everybody could own their own property. For married women couldn't, for example. And maybe this is one of those moments in response to major shifts in the way the world works or doesn't work, at which those kind of basic assumptions need to be challenged again. What do we value? Why is it that in our society, if you look after somebody else's elderly, infirm grandparent, it's a job and you're paid? But if you look after your own elderly, infirm grandparent, it isn't, and you're not. Would it help people, if only marginally, at the interface between the health and the social care system, or facing difficult choices which many elderly people face? Would it help if they were able to rely on just a small extra element of support that belonged to them unconditionally? I believe this is an idea whose time has come, which we need to consider, and I commend the motion to Council.
Sorry. I call on Councillor Garden to sum up briefly.
Yes, I'd like to thank all my fellow councillors for all their comments. Can universal basic income be the answer for the UK? Exactly as stated, we don't know, because a pilot hasn't been done in the UK. We do know that there are encouraging signs and studies done elsewhere. We also know that its support is gaining traction worldwide. This motion is a means to open dialogue and can be seen as an expression of interest to move from the debate to a form of action. Tonight we make a choice. There's a disparity in Oxford in terms of wealth, life expectancy, and life experience. And we should be bold in finding solutions to the entrenched inequality and economic hardships facing far too many in our city. We know that it will take time to make up the economic ground we have lost. It's going to take hard work to fix these gaps, so we can decide to move forward instead of returning to the status quo piecemeal approach that we have at the moment. As much as this pandemic is an unexpected challenge, it is also an unprecedented opportunity. It is an opportunity to build a more resilient country, one that is greener and more competitive, but also kinder and fairer. We need a roadmap towards a society where everyone is safer and healthier, and we are better prepared for future crises. We cannot succeed if half the population is held back. And yes, welfare systems are expensive, both in terms of economics, but also in the emotional effect that it has on people that have to prove that they deserve benefits. So it is important that we get the right one in place to support our communities, but also our local economy. It is especially urgent as we anticipate continued increase in unemployment, child poverty, homelessness, and the use of food banks over the coming year. We need a tested and long-term plan that offers stability and time to recover. A plan to support everyone, not just the wealthy. A universal basic income could be the opportunity to revolutionize a system that is no longer fit for purpose. It may seem impossible, but history is testament that change is possible and good. And there are many examples, such as the end of slavery, equal rights, etc. It is
30 seconds.
Thank you. It is our turn to challenge this government on their plans for rebuilding a stronger and more resilient United Kingdom. As an international university city in 2020, we should be leading the debate and insist on looking at systems that have the ability to allow people to thrive rather than just survive. UBI could be a fair way of eliminating poverty, guaranteeing a minimum standard of living, and improving well-being in the 21st century, We should join the other councils and devolved nations calling for UBI models.
Thank you very much, Councillor Garden.
To be tested across the United.
Thank you.
Please support the motion.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. Now let's move to the vote. So blue hands if you're in support.
So all those in favour? So I have 27 in support. So if you can just bear with me a minute till I jot down who hasn't put their hand up.
Councillor Donnelly, Councillor Hollingsworth,
Yeah.
Councillor Cook, Turner,
Yeah.
Councillor Fry, and Councillor McManus, who I believe is travelling back from work to his home.
Sir, he has rejoined us, I think. But, apologies about this. It just lets me check the next one more easily. Right, so that is 28 hands in support. And could I see those voting against this, please? And if you can take your hand down if you voted. So this is voting against.
I think we have 11.
Can I make it 11? So that's, just score off what I've got. Colin, Richard. Sorry, this is very slightly slower, this.
In hindsight, maybe we should have done a roll call.
No, I think we'll be okay. And if so, that's 20, 11, and if those people who have put their hands up can take them down, and can I see anyone who wishes to abstain? And I have 1, 2, 3, 4 abstentions.
I've just seen, Jennifer, I've just seen Councillor Wade's hand up. I don't know previously if she's voted. I think she's, are you abstaining, Councillor Wade?
No, I have voted for it, but I wonder whether this should be a named vote. I would like it to be a named vote.
No, we voted. We've done this already. Okay, Jennifer, over to you. So we've got 28 for, 11 against, and how many abstentions?
3 abstentions. So that is carried. Check the rules on named vote.
Jennifer, it needs to be taken before they decide to vote, so it's too late.
We've already voted.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Thank you very much for that. Okay, that brings us on to, it should be the last motion. And you have to bear with me with this because I realise there's lots of amendments and everything else. So it'll be my time. It's the advantage of being chair. Okay, we have supporting the climate change and ecological emergency. So the proposer is Councillor Craig Simmons and the seconder is Councillor Wolfe. But I understand Craig has accepted Tom's amendment and will debate the substantive motion as amended. So only voting will be on the amended motion, if I've got that right.
Not quite, Lord Mayor. If I suggested an additional amendment to points 3 and 4 of Tom's amendment, and if he was to accept my further amendments to points 3 and 4, then I will indeed happily accept his amendment to the motion. Perhaps through you, Chair, Councillor Hayes might clarify that.
Councillor Hayes.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. I'm happy to accept Councillor Simmons's further amendment.
Thank you very much.
Lord Mayor, could I just interject? I don't think everybody has actually seen the proposal from Councillor Simmons, and we are quite short of time. So could I propose two things, that I put up the amendment and then the impact of the amendment, and you may want to ask council about time.
Yes, we have 11 minutes. I believe we can get this resolved within that time, because hopefully not too many people speak on this, and we'll just leave it as people have made the proposal and seconder. So can you show us the first amendment, please?
And this won't count as part of the debating time. So what should be on everyone's screen is the amendment that Councillor Simmons has proposed that amends Councillor Hayes' amendment. Lord Mayor, is that reasonably clear?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Would you like me to propose the motion now, Lord Mayor?
Yes, please.
Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Hayes, for accepting my sort of tweaks to his amendment, which I think, you know, makes this a cross-party sort of, you know, we can gain cross-party support for this. So I'll just be very brief, but no one who listened to the Youth Climate Summit on Saturday, which was an excellent event, by the way, could have failed to be moved by the contributions from the young people of Malawi and Uganda. For them, the climate and ecological crisis is not just something they're taught about at school or a banner waving campaign, but lived experience. As the speaker from Oxfam eloquently put it, we owe the poorer peoples of the world a great debt. The richer countries have grown wealthy literally by trashing the planet, and the poorer countries are currently paying the price. The cross-party alliance formed around the climate and ecological emergency bill is a grassroots movement that uses the mechanisms of private members bill to build public awareness and political support around a draft text. Eventually, the aim is to bring a version to Parliament that could pass into law. And people may remember the landmark Climate Change Act passed in 2008, which took a very similar route. It was preceded by a private members bill and an early demolition. So it is a well-worn process that's proven to be successful. What is the CEE bill? Well, there's some information I've provided in the motion, but just to say it's different from the climate change bill in three important ways. It goes a step further on climate emissions, including reference to the UK's impact overseas, and brings the UK domestic carbon targets up to date and aligns them with the Paris Climate Agreement. It also places a duty more broadly on government to protect, conserve and restore natural ecosystems, such as soils, oceans, biodiversity and forests. And thirdly, it includes a requirement for the Secretary of State to establish and then consult with an independent citizens' assembly on a strategy for achieving those objectives. So the bill clearly also states that environmental objectives must be achieved in such a way so as not to disproportionately affect deprived communities or people with protected characteristics under the Equalities Act, and that financial support must be given to people and industries in transition. So this is an ambitious bill. It's very much draft, has a long way to go if it ever is to pass into law, but the approach of creating a private members bill, an EDM, is a proven one to build grassroots and political support. So I'm very much hoping this council can add its voice to those demanding urgent action and to address the climate and ecological crisis. So please support this motion.
Thank you. And then we should have a seconder on the amended motion. Yes?
Yeah. I'm happy to speak briefly. And
briefly,
Craig,
thank you.
Yeah, Craig will sum up. To reiterate, this is an important part of a process which has hopefully got legs, but it really does need to be started. The process has to be started, and this is one way in which it can be done. If it reached the end of the road, it would oblige, in law, Prime Minister and Secretaries of State to take certain measures. And Craig has referred to three important dimensions of it. One really important one is that it would shift the way we account for emissions to a consumer-led method of accounting, which actually places the responsibility where it lies. It means we can't export our responsibility, if you like. And it's also puts a lot of emphasis on natural climate solutions, because there's a lot of talk you will hear about sort of carbon sequestration and all that sort of stuff, which is called negative emissions technologies. And it backs away from that, doesn't rubbish it completely, but it backs away from that and says that, say, restoring the soils and things like that is by far the best way to go, the natural ways of sequestering carbon. So there's a lot of really, really good stuff in there, and it needs to be given a leg up into Parliament.
Thank you, Councillor Wolf. Okay, if I've got this right, we're now debating the amendment.
Lord Mayor,
sorry.
Lord Mayor, I think we are now debating the full motion with 2 amendments. Would you like me to put it up for everybody to see?
Yes, please.
And I think we've got about enough time for 1 or 2 speakers. Okay, so that is the, unless anybody corrects me, that on screen is the motion that we're voting on, or you're voting on.
Yes, I'm happy with that. I take it full councillors as well.
Okay, if I stop sharing so that you can.
Okay, a call on, sorry.
I make it, you've got five or 6 minutes at most.
4 minutes. Councillor Tom Hayes.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. I'll try not to do the trick of fitting more words into fewer minutes. I want to start by welcoming the passion and the commitment of the campaigners of Oxford who have helped to bring forward this motion tonight. It's with people like them that we're as a city going to be able to tackle our climate breakdown more effectively. The 2 amendments that I proposed were largely focusing on outlining in greater detail where we are as a country and laying out the real need for urgent action to address our climate breakdown. On the first, I think it's fair to say, and we would all agree across parties, that the government are a shambles. They're out of their depth, and their own advisory body, the Climate Change Committee, has made clear that we're not on track to meet their own net zero 2050 target, which the government have put into law. In fact, the UK is just over 1/3 of the way to achieving the annual emissions reductions needed to deliver net zero. So when we know we have an uphill battle, when we know that recent announcements have paled in comparison with those of European countries, which are proposing a real green economic recovery, what can we do? We especially need to take action because we know that it's this government which will be hosting next year's crucial COP26 UN summit, and also that it's this government which is holding back our council. And so the First Amendment seeks to set out very clearly the national failures created by a decade of Conservative failure. Secondly, the amendments seek to look at what can actually be done right here, right now. If I had more time, I would talk to the benefits of the CEE bill, but it is a presentation bill with no guarantee of parliamentary time, debate or a vote, and it has a long way to go, as Councillor Simmons has just said, and we don't have a lot of time to go a long way. So what can we do in the meantime while support is building for the aims of that bill? One such solution, which has been supported by Councillor Simmons in his further amendment, is to back policies such as the Labour Party's Green Economic Recovery, which has been announced recently, a widely supported and implementable plan. It's a way for a government to take a plan which is fully implementable right now, which is costed, could make a big difference to our fight back against climate breakdown, and could also fix the jobs crisis that we're facing as a consequence of the pandemic by helping to invest in infrastructure, which allows for the creation of the green jobs of the future. I'll close just by thanking Councillor Simmons for the spirit of cooperation that he has shown in our working on this motion. Time's running out to fix our climate breakdown and solutions matter. Cooperation such as this, which we've seen tonight, will be even more critical in the years and months ahead. So I look forward to our council hopefully supporting this amended motion and for us to send a strong signal that we intend to go on forcing the hand of the Conservative government.
Thank you, Councillor Tom Hayes. Okay, so then we get the proposer to amend summing up. Is that right, Jennifer?
Yeah, no.
Yep. Yeah. If
I'll be extremely sorry. I'll just be extremely brief because I think everyone, the only things we've heard have been supportive, and thank you again to Councillor Hayes for putting this, constructive amendment forward, which helps explain where we are and gives a bit more detail to those, and obviously for pointing out the CEE Bill Alliance, Oxfordshire Alliance, who are very active at campaigning on this, and we have a very active local group, and we're very lucky to benefit from that. And also the timeliness, which is the other good point you raised around, the Glasgow COP next year, and the government is hosting it, and so things like this, which help add pressure to the UK, even though it's, as you say, it's some way from being passed through Parliament, it does add to pressure, and it is really important to keep that pressure up at this critical time. So thank you very much for everyone, your contributions, and I hope Council will support.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Craig Simmons. And that then takes us over to the blue hand voting. So those in support, show your blue hands.
So this is in support of the motion with both amendments.
Yes.
Let me just check. And I have 38 hands up, which is all the councillors. I just need
except Mike Gotch.
Gotch, if I can. Councillor Gotch, are you thumbs up or thumbs down for this one?
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. So that's everybody has voted in support of this motion, so that's carried.
Wow, did it. Okay, so that's the end of, yes, that's the end of business for tonight. I declare the meeting closed, and thank you all for attending, and thank you very much for the councillors who supported me, but more importantly to our officers always been there. Thank you very much.
Well done.